All right. What is up, perps? So I was not going to stream right now. I wasn't. I was really. Let me get some other things squared away because I wasn't going to. Uh, I was really gonna chill out. Maybe even try to take a little bit of a nap. But there's some things that were getting on my nerves. I was sitting here listening to, and John Crump and Dark and everybody I didn't see going live, so therefore here I am. What is going on, guys? Run Gun, what's up? Live life, my brother. What's happening, brother Warsaw? How's it going? Yeah, welcome to another impromptu stream of nothing but fucking pain. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at. Uh, it's been a busy day, but I did watch Warsaw. You heard Greg talking about it this morning. The case in Illinois that was in the Supreme Court today. The Supreme Court of Illinois today. I did watch that. Um, Matter of fact, I listened to it. Oh God, I got done with a bunch of other shit for work. And I was listening to that and decided, hey, well, let's look at a couple other things, see what happened today, and now we're here. So thank you very much, Democrats, you big pieces of giant shit. Now we get to share this with everybody else. So, Bradley, what's up, my brother? Zaty, what is happening? Brother man, what's going on? So hopefully my connection will hang out. It's been doing pretty decent during the evenings. I'm going to share a couple things out real fast. And by the way, kids, hold on, I'll share it in the chat. There is a hearing about the ATF coming up on the 23rd. I doubt whether I'll be able to stream it live because I'm going to be probably up to my ass. But you can bet we will be getting into that as soon as we can. So that's the link for it. If anybody wants to throw a reminder up there, if anybody else is as sadistic or masochistic, I guess it would, yeah, it'd be masochistic as I am, and you want to torture yourself. There you go. I'm not saying that there's a possibility, depending on what's going on. I might, even if I'm at work, I might still stream it and just hang in the chat like I've done a few times. But we'll have to see. Let me throw a couple things out real fast. I'm getting more freaking messages about, hey, vote this, hey, vote that. Apparently, they haven't got the memo. PLA, what's up, my brother? So, like I said, here we are. I'm going to do a screen share. As always, because you guys know me, if you're going to go big, you just better go all the way. And we do a lot of sharing of entire events here. So we're going to do it. Oh, man. I think this is just this. Here we go. Da, da, da. Here we go. So apparently today has, and it's funny, you kind of got to watch. Abigail, what's up, sis? You kind of got to watch the way Democrats are trying to balance things right now. On one hand, it seems like they're trying to stay really quiet about guns. Biden mentions them kind of every once in a while, but they're not just drilling on them. When you see people like Dick Durbin come out and start holding news conferences, then you know there's a really big push going. He's one of their big names. He's going to be one of the ones pushing. When you see something like this, where you see them pull all these doctors in, and this is all about, you know, pushing for gun safety and common sense and all this horse shit. There's a bigger push coming. Why am I saying so fucking much right now? Hey, kiss my ass. It's my stream. You guys showed up for this. I do this to myself. All right, so let me play this. Let's listen to this, because if you wanted to see textbook 101 anti-gun propaganda, this is it.
Are we on?
Let me know whether the sound's good. And of course my connection starts to go stupid the minute I hit the button. Let me do this. Let me take myself off screen and let me see whether that'll kind of help us out. It could just be my ugly ass face messing it up.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to an
hell yeah, Zany
press event to discuss the public health crisis of this gun violence epidemic in the United States. We
5x5 on the sound, kids.
It is an honor to introduce our first speaker. Senator Dick Durbin is the senior United States Senator from Illinois. Since 2005, he has served as the Senate Democratic Whip and currently holds the title of Senate Majority Whip. Additionally, he is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee and presided over the November 2023 hearing entitled The Gun Violence Epidemic, a Public Health Crisis. With enormous respect, I turn the mic over to my senator.
You got that right, Ab. His lips are moving.
Thank you. Well, what an honor it is to be here today with this organization, which I think is one of the more important,
because it is a cult,
in our national gun debate. There's a reason why Emily and Elliot have taken up this responsibility.
Yeah, it's still blocked, brother, at least right now.
Present in Highland Park in 2022 when a gunman went on top of a local business. And
now, since you're asking that, PLE, I'll pause him for a second. So for now, and I'd have to go back and look when exactly it goes out, but for now, the ban on private sales, which is basically what it is not in effect as long as you are in Texas, you are a GOA member, and a member of a couple other gun rights groups, Tennessee something. Tennessee, I can't remember offhand. It's not for everybody around the entire country. It was only for people involved with the plaintiffs in the case. So say if you lived in Michigan, nope, you're still screwed. Unless you are a GOA member or a member of one of these other groups. So that's where that's sitting right now. As far as I understand it. You guys know me. I just, not the most brilliant thing, but
60 seconds fired off more than 83 rounds, killing 7 and wounding dozens of others. I'm sure they'll never be able to forget that day. I wouldn't be able to. But they also came to this issue not just from that experience and witness, but also from their own medical professional backgrounds. They understand what these guns do. They kill, yes, but they maim and they cause people to suffer and their lives to change dramatically. All the more reason for us to put an end to assault weapons.
It'd be close, Warsaw.
These are military weapons designed.
And we're going to listen to something after this talking about judge shopping
in extreme circumstances, but not for ordinary
citizens. That's what they're accusing
owning and using is
gun rights groups
of gun ownership in America. That has to change. They also support legislation, which I support, to put responsibilities on gun owners to safely store their guns so that children don't have access to them. That is part of the process as well. We're facing the reality that children in America have as their number one cause of death, teenagers and younger, gun violence itself. It's the reality of their lives, and it has
Now
been
remember,
for a long
we have
time.
wrecked those
Things
numbers
change around the world,
many
and they
times.
do on a regular basis. I've seen that as a member of the Senate. Wars start and end, other things occur, but the reality is there's
I
a
don't mind the
constant in
age, just
American
the
law that I'm
lies.
very embarrassed to say we are allowed to transpire and to exist
And
for
by the
too
way,
long a
PLA,
period of
it's
time,
hard
and
to
that is
see,
gun
but that
violence,
little
wanton
black
gun violence. What
rectangle
we
down
need to
there
do is to
is
say, as
that
American
obey
voters, we're going to
sticker
the
that you
polls
sent
to
me.
elect women and men who have a sense of responsibility to change this once and for all, to take away these gun threats, which all of us have to witness, no matter where you go, supermarket, church, synagogue, classroom, wherever you go, you are vulnerable. Parents are becoming increasingly adamant about the fact that they want their children safe in school, for example, something we used to assume in the past
Oh,
just
dude, I
came
love
with
it.
part of being an American. Now it's something that we have to fight for, and we are fighting for it. I thank On Call for Kids for gathering in Washington today. I hear you. I'll do everything in my power to move this issue forward as quickly as possible. So thank you for your credibility and your professionalism that brings.
Here's a question. I didn't think about this earlier because I skimmed through this. How much money do you think Democrats spent to fly all these doctors and medical professionals up to Washington to go lobby for their gun laws? I'd be interested to know.
This moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Durbin. I've got to lower the mic now for myself.
You're lowering
Hi,
the
everyone.
bar.
I'm Emily Lieberman. My husband and I are both Dr. Lieberman at work. As a pediatrician, every day I'm on call for kids at my clinic. But today we stand before America in front of our nation's capital because
Make
being
that
on
bigger,
call
bigger.
for kids at work is no longer enough. Now we are on call for kids in every aspect of our lives. After July 4th of 2022, I realized that even I, a pediatrician by training, do not have the power to keep my children safe. On that day, the most patriotic day of the year, our family attended the Highland Park
You better me,
Independence
War,
Day
because I
Parade.
couldn't even give one.
Floats passed, children collected candy in the streets, and then 14 minutes later, 83 high-velocity bullets rained down on my community. My husband and older daughter started running, and by the time I grabbed my younger daughter, I was caught in the stampede of people trying to escape. I ended up sheltering in a single occupancy bathroom within a local store. We had 17 total people in that tiny little bathroom with adult bodies covering our children while we sat in darkness and silence for hours. Instead of kids with flags and candy, our town was littered with the blood of our neighbors, human bodies, and shreds of vital organs. My family was lucky that day.
You ain't
We were all
wrong. Yeah,
physically unharmed, but our lives were forever every day since. And I'm not alone, because here before you, we have a coalition of physicians and healthcare workers, medical professionals from across the country who are dedicated to addressing this public health crisis of gun violence. They're grateful to our officials for passing the Bipartisan Communities Act. Incremental progress is still progress. However, death rates from firearms continue to climb. Children are dying from firearms
No, they're
daily
not.
at increasing rates. And those who survive, their families, their communities, are left irrevocably changed. Military weapons should not be for the streets of America. They should be for the battlefield. Background checks should be universal.
Yeah,
People
PLA
with
100%.
guns should be required to store them safely so that a child doesn't mistake a weapon for a toy. Today, over 80 medical professionals are spending the day on Capitol Hill to provide our lawmakers officials who we elect to office, officials who should be accountable.
Okay, I'm going to say this right here because I got to, because it's just boiling. How many of these doctors, medical professionals, push the jab on children?
To us with research and data to
trust the
save our
science
children's
and all
lives.
that.
The facts are clear. Gun safety legislation will save lives. It will help my family and yours to know that once again, it is okay to walk to school, to shop at your local grocery store, or even to attend an Independence Day parade. Is that too much to ask?
You can teach your children not to touch a hot stove, not to run through traffic, not to juggle flaming chainsaws. You can teach them
Thank you.
to not
Thank you, Emily.
play with firearms.
I stand before you today as a father and surgeon alongside my wife, a pediatrician and organizer, as well as this incredible group of advocates on Call for Kids, because it should never be too much to ask our elected officials.
Yeah, Warsaw, you think they would learn by
in our
now?
communities safe.
This is not about safety. This is
We
about
have a
control.
history in America of protecting children. For centuries, the leading cause of death in children was communicable illness. We addressed infectious disease through sanitation processes, hand washing, vaccines, and more. Then, in the middle of the 20th century, motor vehicle accidents became the leading cause of death in children. So we enacted seatbelt laws.
Yep.
Now, since 2020, for the first time in the history of our great country, firearms are the leading cause of death in children. Think about it this way. If your child dies in this country, the most likely reason will not be a drowning accident.
Yeah,
It
Ron,
won't
you're
be a car
100%
crash,
right.
and not even cancer. It's a bullet. Here is some published data to digest. Every 3 days, enough children to fill an entire school bus die from firearm injuries.
Now, he's using the term children. And we all know already, we've looked at it intensely on streams. If your child is not involved in gangs and drugs, they are more likely to get run over by a zebra on a Tuesday afternoon than to be harmed by a firearm. Firearms education for children would take care of the basic ignorance about firearms. That would stop a large portion of firearms injuries. And then how about we deal with the mental health of our children? Because the majority of what they're talking about are suicides, just like the majority of firearms deaths with adults are suicides. So how about we deal with the gang problem? How about we deal with the mental health problem? And then we go to education. Then you don't have to worry about all this other horse shit. Jason, what's up, my brother? Much love. Because when we look at these numbers, and we've broke them down, we've been through the Whiskers data from the CDC and a bunch of other stuff on streams before. There are less, somewhere maybe around 100 and some change innocent children who get killed by firearms every year in the United States. Now, that includes a child that finds a gun, shoots themselves, a child that finds a gun, shoots someone else, or a drive-by shooting, someone shooting into a house and then killing an unintended victim. So it's nowhere near being able to break these numbers down clearly. They want these numbers as muddy as possible. That way they can add in suicides. They can add in gang members. They can add in, a fucking meteorite falling from the sky and the kid had a gun, so they called it a gun death, even though the gun didn't have anything to do with it. All they're doing is pumping up the numbers. If this was such a crisis with children, they wouldn't have to fuck with the numbers so hard. Damien, what's up, my brother? So yeah, let's get back to this. Hey, you just remember, you guys volunteer for this shit. I do this for myself.
Nearly 75% of firearms used in unintentional shootings are left unlocked and fully loaded. And 75% of school shooters get their weapons from a parent or a close relative.
Yeah, it's 100%.
In states where universal background checks are required for all purchases, childhood mortality due to firearms is reduced by over 1/3. During the years of the federal assault weapons ban, from 1994 to 2004, mass shooting-related homicides were reduced, and fatalities from mass shootings were 70% less likely to occur. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was the most important law.
I gotta let this play, but damn, it's so hard when there's so many fucking lies popping out of their mouths. The assault weapons ban. Even the DOJ, the Department of Justice, had to admit that it had statistically no effect on gun deaths or violent crime related to guns. That drop in so-called mass shootings was because the other parts of laws were taking violent criminals and putting them in prison for very long amounts of time. Therefore, they weren't out on the street fucking doing the shooting. And it was a feature ban, not an assault weapons ban. So I could take all the features off an M4, make it look, more retarded, and then I could still sell it. So there were actually more in private hands at the end of the ban than there was at the start of the ban. Because you basically told the American people that's a no-no, and I promise you, when you tell them that's a no-no, we're going to yes it. So everything that is falling out of his face right there is factually wrong. It is a goddamned lie. This is why I should have gone to sleep. Tactical FUD, my brother, what's happening? Welcome to hell. Yeah, Olympic Arms made their name back then. Yeah, a bunch of companies did.
Law to address gun safety in our country in the past 30 years, but it must be just the first step. Kids are dying every single day.
Remember, just
and
the
those
first
who live
step.
in poverty or are in historically marginalized communities
Give
are dying at a much higher rate than their peers. Black children are more than 10 times likely to die by firearm homicide, and Alaska Native and American Indian children are more than 3 times likely to die by suicide.
What's the cultural difference
We
there?
need a safe storage law to keep our
Johnny
children
Propane, what's
safe
up,
from
my
weapons
brother?
in their homes. We need universal background checks to help keep dangerous weapons out of the hands of dangerous people. And we need a law to keep military weapons off our streets. Together, it is our Hippocratic oath to prevent harm. We are carrying out that oath by advocating for gun safety, and we are carrying out that oath as on-call.
Well, look, dude, you're right. Abortion's killing way more kids than guns every day, hands down. When we break down the numbers on innocent children killed by firearms, whether it is a unintentional shooting where the kid finds a gun, or where the kid finds a gun to shoot someone else, or whether it is a drive-by and the kid gets hurt, those numbers pale in comparison to the number of children killed by household chemicals. So here's your doctors, your evidence-based people, supposedly going after something that the only way you get to this number is to ignore the majority of deaths for innocent children, and you have to add in gangbangers and people involved in drug dealing and all that. I'm sorry. 2 gangbangers, one killing another one, that's the cost of business in some neighborhoods or some cultures. It sucks. It's the way it is. You want to change that? Change the culture. Because if it wasn't a gun, it'd be a knife. It'd be a beating by multiple people. You name it. the violence is going to be there. But they make this entire argument like there's only 2 deaths from firearms. Well, 3. The suicide, which I promise you, if someone is actually dedicated to committing suicide, they will use any means necessary. You see that in countries like Japan, where they don't have guns, they have a higher suicide rate than us. You see that. Oh man, it just makes my fucking brain hurt that these people can't distinguish these things. But the reason they can't is they're absolutely intellectually dishonest about it, and they don't want to be honest about the numbers. They absolutely don't want to be, because if they were honest about the numbers, you would realize that in the United States, in a country of over 360, probably 380 million people right now, we have less than 8,000 deaths per year that are murders with firearms. You will see more innocent children that drowned or consume some sort of household chemical, be it a cleaning chemical, a medication. You will see more innocent children die from that than you will from firearms. We've broken these numbers down sideways to actually get to root causes, and they don't want to address any of that. I guarantee you in this entire thing, and I skimmed through it earlier a little bit, I guarantee you in pretty much any of the arguments, they never focus on the one who actually pulls the trigger to do a mass shooting, any of that. They never mention child suicide and go, why are kids wanting to commit suicide at fucking 13 any goddamn way? Maybe we need to address that. Yeah, run guns. Innocent children killed in vehicle accidents far outweighs what they're calling children as far as gun deaths. You have to add in all these people involved in the gang life, in the drug life, all that to get to the numbers they're spouting at. That's why they can't be honest about the numbers. Agarizer, my brother, what is happening? Thanks for checking in to another episode of Yeah, This Is Painful.
All for kids, today and every day.
It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Ashley Jaffe. She's an associate professor and pediatric rehabilitation medicine physician based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As a pediatric physiatrist, she has dedicated her professional career to providing care for children with physical disabilities. She commonly cared for children with morbidity from firearms, including traumatic brain injuries and spinal cord injuries. However, her narrative took a profound turn on July 4th of 2022 when she herself became a victim of gun violence. Today,
Agarizer,
will
you just
candidly
like the
share her
pain, man.
journey
That's
from
the same
physician
with all of you guys.
caretaker to patient and survivor.
You guys are as bad as I am. You just want someone else to hit the play button for you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. My name is Dr. Ashley Jaffe, and I work as a pediatric rehabilitation medicine physician in Philadelphia. As a physiatrist, I witness firsthand what the statistics often fail to capture, the morbidity of gun violence. We must acknowledge those who lived and whose lives are forever changed. It's not just the deaths we must remember. I've been at the bedside.
No, she didn't say. She
helping
didn't say
families understand the
podiatrist.
devastation caused by
It's a
firearms.
podiatrist.
I've seen unintentional shootings cause traumatic brain and spinal cord injuries. The child who will never walk again because a sibling found an unsecured gun in their house and accidentally shot him. The teenager who tried to end their life with a gunshot to the head and lost the ability to communicate or
Oh, hell no, Abigail. Why would
and
they
requires
cite their
around-the-clock
sources?
care for life.
Shit.
A single
People
bullet
might
can
actually be able to look
permanently
at their
impact a
facts
child's
then.
function, altering the entire trajectory of that child's life and tearing apart their family as they grieve. As challenging as it is to witness my patients' families cope after firearm injuries, there has been no greater challenge in my life than the struggle I have gone through during the last 22 months after I became a victim of gun violence myself. On July 4th, 2022, I brought my family to a community parade in Highland Park, Illinois, to celebrate a return to normalcy after the isolation of the pandemic. Excruciating pain and blood dripping from my palm was the first clue that something was gravely wrong. I've been hit. Get down. I screamed with uncertainty as my brain scrambled to process what was happening. The celebration had turned into a war zone. As gunshots blazed overhead, the gravity of the situation was sinking in. Something had grazed my elbow and sliced open my palm. My 5-year-old son had noticed my watch was shot off my wrist, and he was walking into the onslaught of gunfire to retrieve it for me. "Mommy, your watch," he cried. I dove for him and shoved him underneath the bench we were sitting on, wrapping my body around his small frame as he shrieked in terror at the blood dripping from my hand onto the sidewalk. We were at the epicenter of the carnage, and those sitting in front of and next to us were killed that day. The screaming and bullets abruptly stopped. It was eerily quiet. When we stood up and looked around, the street corner was practically empty. We saw pools of blood. Bystanders were performing chest compressions and holding pressure on spurting wounds. I locked eyes with my husband and urged him to take our son away to safety. We didn't know whose blood was smeared on his face and clothes. In spite of my struggle to hold pressure on my wrist to control my own bleeding, I felt compelled to stay back and help the wounded. Abruptly, the unending danger of the situation truly sunk in when storming SWAT team radios were blaring, "Shooter not apprehended, shooter not apprehended, clear the scene." My friend came out of nowhere to escort me from danger into the hospital. I was shot by an assault rifle that sprayed 83 bullets into a crowded suburban street in less than 1 minute. It is incomprehensible how much destruction one weapon can do in so little time. In the aftermath of the shooting, my then 5-year-old son asked, "Is this always what parades are like?" The ripple effects of 60 seconds of gunfire are far-reaching and long-lasting. Gun violence takes a toll on families, physically, financially, emotionally. That day changed our entire lives, and my injuries have kept me from being able to return to take care of my patients. Stitches and months of rehab could not change the permanent neurologic injury I sustained. It is unlikely that I'll ever be able to do my job again as a result of my injuries. In kindergarten last year, my son was upset that they weren't doing active intruder drills correctly. "Bullets can go through drywall. We should hide behind bricks instead," he told us. That's what we did at the parade. As my son ages, his questions have become more sophisticated. When he heard that there used to be an assault rifle ban in this country, he asked, how could anyone let that law disappear? And so, America, I ask you that same question. Why have we...
Hold on. Let's do this. We're going to do something real quick. I got to share another sheet here. I'm going to share this. So this is a Whiskers, and this is all leading causes of death for unintentional death for all ages. This is the 2022 data, number of causes. They list the basically top 10 causes. And it's for, basically, we're going to look at a huge spreadsheet. But let's focus on, let's say, 10 through 14. Well, no, let's go through 15 to 24 for unintentional. Number one causes of death: unintentional suffocation, unintentional drowning for the first cause. For 5 to 9, MV traffic accident, unintentional traffic accident, unintentional traffic accident. Unintentional poisoning, you get out to 25 to 34. But all the way up to 24, you're looking at suffocation, drowning, motor vehicle, traffic. All right, let's go down to the number 2 cause of death. Unintentional poisoning, 15 to 24, going back down the list. 10 to 14, unintentional drowning. 5 to 9, unintentional drowning. 1 to 4, unintentional motor vehicle. Less than 1, unintentional motor vehicle. Number 3 cause of death, unintentional drowning, unintentional suffocation, um, unintentional hot object or substance. So basically, like turning over a frying pan or something like that, or fire, lighting a fire, some shit like that, more than likely. 10 to 14, unintentional poisoning. 15 to 24, unintentional drowning. Kids are getting more experimental. They're swimming more. They drown. The number 4 cause of death, unintentional other land transport. So that could be a bicycle, something like that. 10 to 14, and we're on the 4th category here. Unintentional land transport. 5 to 9 would be unintentional suffocation. 1 to 4, unintentional hot object or substance. So again, getting back to a some sort of fire, some sort of accident with hot oil or grease, stuff like that. Unintentional poisoning, less than 1. So let's get down to the 5th leading cause. Unintentional natural environment. Okay, tornado, falling off a porch without a rail, something like that. Unintentional poisoning, unintentional land transport, unintentional fire or flame. So a kid lighting a fire. And again, that is the 10 to 14. So, and then unintentional fall would be the 15 to 24. Let's go down. Where do they mention firearm? So unintentional firearm for this category, for this is all unintentional deaths, doesn't come until the 6th cause of death. And in the 6th cause of death, that is for 5 to 9-year-olds. All right. For the 7th cause of death, we don't find unintentional firearm until you get to 10 to 14-year-olds. And again, this is all leading causes of death unintentional. And then we find the 8th cause of death, or 8th cause of death for that should be 15 to 24-year-olds. Unintentional firearms doesn't come in until the 7th or the 8th cause of death. And then the 9th cause of death, nothing about firearms, unintentional suffocation. So these people are so fucking full of shit. It's not even funny anymore. But they'll sit up there and lie right to your goddamn face and tell you, oh, it's guns, it's guns, it's guns. It's nothing to do with guns. Hold on, I'm going to have to probably refresh this. I don't know Warsaw because I wasn't even planning on doing this damn stream tonight. How far are we into this? We're 1722. So let me refresh this because I want to make sure the audio is good and my browser's acting funky. You guys gonna get hit with a commercial real fast. All right, let me make sure the audio is good, guys. Let me know. Shayna, what's up, my sister? Mike McClune. Is the sound not good? Where's the sound? No sound. All right, give me a second, because if there was no sound during that, I got to back it up a little bit. Hold on. Let me do this. Let me copy this. I'm going to redo the whole tab. Kill that, because this was today. Yeah, I watched too much C-SPAN for my own freaking health. Make sure I brought that over. Yes, let me let this load back up. But you do though. Yeah. All right, let me let this load back up because my connection was going screwy, and StreamYard, when my connection starts going screwy, will sometimes drop the sound. If you guys can hear me, you should be able to hear everything else. Sam Fisher, what's up, my brother? I just saw you come in. All right, so let's see. Let me share this tab again. Screen share, bunch of lying bastards. Here we go. And then let me get back to where we were at. Why? I'm hoping just that ad doesn't have sound. 17, 18, 17,
Project our
28.
children to act
All
as
right, let me know
shield
if we
at
got
school
sound on this.
when they should feel safe to learn in their classrooms.
Tell me we're good
not
on the
hide in
sound
them.
now.
I remember safety drills in school for fires and tornadoes. I never had to stay quiet, huddled under a desk, pretending someone was outside my classroom trying to kill me. We can do better. I am here today and will continue showing up.
All right, we got
I
sound
can
now.
tell
We're good.
him that the adults in this country
All right.
are doing everything they can to make this world safer for him than it is right now. Firearm injuries are the leading cause of death for children in this country, which is shameful. I'd like to believe that this is the only time my family would be shot at with a weapon that no civilian should ever be able to purchase. However, with escalating gun violence of this magnitude and without an assault weapon ban or background checks or safe gun storage, I live in constant fear for our safety. While the size of my wound was small, the trauma I experienced was enormous. Gun violence is a public health crisis that affects communities across this country. Evidence-based and common sense laws can make a difference to protect our children and our communities. It is not only possible, but probable that my family will be impacted by gun violence again in the future unless something changes. July 4th needs to be my son's only mass shooting, not his first. I implore our lawmakers to pass common sense gun laws now.
There's no such thing as a common sense gun law, so that's going to be kind of hard to find. But, and then, God, a few people have posted in chat already. Part of what they're pushing for is a safe storage law. Safe storage laws don't come into effect until after something happens, and then it's basically just upping the charges against somebody. Banning assault weapons. Okay, hey, ban them. Okay. What happens when a dude posts up with a bolt action rifle, 30-06, and just starts hammering people? Because that's going to do a hell of a lot more damage than a 2.23 or a 5.56 round. What happens? We're saying Abigail, Kennesaw County, Kennesaw, Georgia had a basically an ordinance passed that said every homeowner that could legally own a firearm had to have a firearm in their home. Not really enforced, but they passed that ordinance, and guess what happened? Crime in those neighborhoods fell through the fucking floor. They just can't find it. If you want a safe place to live, Kennesaw, Georgia is where it's at. Mike McClune, I don't think you can pinpoint a single point in time where everything went fucked up and off the rails. It's been a very slow train wreck. Matter of fact, it is still derailing, and there's some really big cars in the ass end of this that have not derailed yet, but they're on their way. So, yeah, buckle up, Buttercup, because you know how it is. It's
Thank
going to
you
get
for
worse.
that very heartfelt speech. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Nicole King. She's a critical care anesthesiologist who works in Cincinnati, Ohio. She's originally from Kansas City, Missouri, and currently lives in Kentucky. She completed medical training at the Naval Medical Center in
Here
San
we go with some of the vet bros.
and she then spent 10 years in the U.S. Navy. She was honorably discharged as lieutenant commander. She joins us today to share her veteran's perspective on the gun violence epidemic in America.
Good afternoon. As stated, my name is Nicole King, and I am a critical care anesthesiologist in Cincinnati, Ohio. Originally from Kansas City, Missouri, I was motivated and honored to commission in the Navy as a medical student to uphold and defend the freedom and opportunity I was given by those who came before me. Serving others as both a physician and a naval officer was the biggest honor of my life. The people, the camaraderie, the dedication to the mission, the promise that the person next to you would do as much for you as you would do for them, created a community of support and dedication unknown by many civilians. At the same time, the pain of loss, both in battle and at home, was a burden to carry. And many of us carry the wounds today, whether visible or not. I served from 2008 to 2018 and received Wounded Warriors as a trainee and attending physician in San Diego. One of the reasons I was lucky enough to care for men and women who had sustained injuries in a war zone was because of the training and expertise of medical personnel who understood the damage done by weapons of war. Weapons meant to kill. Weapons designed, sold, and carried by military forces across the globe to kill humans as quickly as possible. These same weapons are now rebranded and sold to civilians who think carrying a weapon of war implies and bolsters their facade of service. But there is nothing heroic about the use of these weapons specifically to slaughter and maim adults and children. Americans who are attempting to enjoy the freedom and opportunity we promise them by putting on our uniform. They deserve better. They deserve to live in a country that regulates semi-automatic assault weapons. We can do better. Additionally, I understand the importance of gun ownership to many, including my own family. The foundation of this right is deeply held by many, and I am not ignorant to the historical precedent and inherent need to protect oneself in the face of tyranny as a reason to defend a right to gun ownership. Yet the veterans and active duty service members who spend time on military bases across the country are held to strict rules and regulations on the possession and use of personal weapons, to include mandatory background checks. These same regulations are not only absent, but openly rejected by many states. Those who are disciplined enough and trained well enough to carry a weapon as a member of the US military are not given, without proper permission and regulations, the right to bear arms, even in their own homes, if they reside in base-owned housing. Yet untrained, unskilled, and unregulated civilians are allowed gun ownership with little to no restriction depending on the state in which they reside. Rejecting point of contact regulations to ensure state-run background checks, as well as allowing for the purchase of weapons via private and online sales without a need for a background check, has allowed for the constant flow of weapons into our interstate gun trade. As these weapons are distributed across the country, we are left with a constant threat and fear of firearm-related injuries. This is the reason we call on Congress to bring universal background checks to the floor. This is a nonpartisan issue. No one is calling for anything other than common sense gun laws that most American citizens, including gun owners, agree with. It's time for us to take back our freedom to live without fear.
Thank you, Dr. King. We'd now like to introduce Dr. Sophia Chowdhury. She's a pediatric emergency medicine physician and assistant professor in Atlanta, Georgia. She's also a co-chair for the Violence Prevention Task Force for the Pediatric Injury Prevention Research Center at her institution. She completed a Health Policy Scholars Fellowship program through the Academic Pediatric Association. Dr. Chowdhury has co-authored multiple publications on the impact of firearm injuries on children and teens, including not only financial costs and physical health, but also mental health and disparities in access to continued care.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sophia Chowdhury. I'm a pediatric emergency medicine physician in Atlanta, Georgia, a firearm injury prevention researcher, and a mother of 3 young children. As an emergency medicine physician, I have cared for multiple children with gunshot wounds. I have witnessed firsthand the devastation that occurs when a child needlessly gains access to an unsecured firearm. I remember a 2-year-old boy shot in the chest by his 6-year-old brother who had found a loaded, unlocked gun in their parents' bedroom drawer. A 1-month-old baby girl with brain matter pouring out from a bullet wound. She was unintentionally shot by her 3-year-old cousin using a loaded gun he found tucked behind a sofa cushion. A 15-year-old boy who pointed a family gun to his chest while showing it to his friends and thinking it unloaded, pulled the trigger. These patients haunt me. Their needless, senseless loss haunts me. The piercing cries of their parents haunt me. Despite my years of rigorous medical training and working with highly skilled trauma teams, we could not save these children. These deaths were all completely preventable with secure storage. Gun violence is a public health crisis that kills more children, adolescents, and young adults than anything else in the United States, including car crashes and cancer. Many of these deaths and injuries that occur are due to children accessing guns that were unsafely stored. 2023 was the worst year for unintentional shootings by children in the US, a record high of over 400 children unintentionally shooting someone else, most often another child. Passing Ethan's Law, a federal safe storage law that requires guns to be locked and stored separate from ammunition, will prevent many of these deaths. The bipartisan Safer Communities Act passed after the tragedy in Uvalde and was the first federal firearm legislation for firearm safety in decades. This law has improved needed access to mental health services and promoted school programming for violence intervention programs. The successes show that federal legislation works. However, despite this landmark legislation, we still have thousands of kids dying from guns every year and many more injured, with minoritized youth and historically marginalized communities being disproportionately killed and injured by guns. For every child that dies from a firearm injury, there are at least 4 or more that are injured. Bullets can damage any organ. They can sever spinal cords, causing paralysis and the need for lifelong care. They can go through the intestines, causing lifelong issues with feeding, growth, and digestion. Many of these children have frequent healthcare visits and hospitalizations, incurring enormous medical costs. These kids are robbed from their childhoods. Most gun owners with children own firearms to protect their families, and I want to protect families too. The best way to protect a child from a firearm is to prevent them from having access to it. This is something that is not controversial. Most parents believe that their child cannot access their guns, but we know that 1 in 3 teens can access a loaded firearm in under 5 minutes. In a time when we have a concurrent mental health crisis, it is imperative to continue to protect our kids. Suicide by firearm is 90% fatal, and most youth who think about suicide act upon it in less than an hour. It is impulsive. If they use a gun, they do not get a second chance. Locking up guns is one way to give kids that second chance. Caring for a child after being shot is too late. We know that by having common sense safe storage laws, we can keep our children safe. In states with no safe storage laws, kids die at a rate twice as those with the strongest laws. Imagine how many lives we could save if the entire country was held to those high standards. It is time for Congress to use its tools to protect the safety of our children. I use tools every day in my job. We use tools to care for children impacted by gunshot wounds, to help them heal, to help them walk again. The best way to treat a gunshot wound is to prevent it from happening, and that is through having strong safe storage laws. I often hear from parents the same question: did you do everything you could to save my child? And I can tell you that being here today helps me say yes, because saving your child is not just medically treating them, but also standing here and asking for action. I am asking you the same question that I am asked. Did you do everything you could to save and protect America's children? Thank you.
We are currently waiting for Senator Murphy, who should hopefully be here within the next 5 minutes.
If anyone had questions that they wanted to ask of any of our speakers while we're waiting for Senator Murphy, please feel free to ask.
All right, let me unmute myself. I've been on the phone with the wife, so and then listen to this in the background. Fluffy, I have questions. Yeah, don't we all?
I think that at this time there are a couple
I have
solutions
lots
that
of
could actually
questions.
happen. I want to start with a shout out to Senator Heinrich's outstanding new bill, the Go Safe Act.
I have to
That
look up the
really
Go
has
Safe
some
Act.
bipartisan potential, specifically because of the buyback program and the focus on the firearm itself and the mechanisms. I think that if we could gain more co-sponsorship there could be a lot of bipartisan potential to save lives. Because as we've shown you today, even from a veteran's perspective, these weapons of war do not belong on the streets of civilians, and physicians
The
cannot
streets of
cure the
civilians.
would inflicted by these injuries.
They
I
do,
would also
however,
say that
belong in
for
civilian
secure
hands.
storage, that is also something that our government should be able to pass. In addition to background checks, it's really important that everyone understands that all three bills are things that most Americans want. Whether you're a gun owner or not, most Americans want all three of these passed. So
No,
it's
no, we
only
don't.
in these walls that this becomes political. It's not for most Americans. And while we want all three bills passed more than anything, my personal plight also is to get
Okay,
weapons
I got to
of
throw
war
myself
out of
back
the
on
hands of
screen here. I'm
civilians.
going to
And at this
jeopardize my
time,
connection.
I'll have my husband.
It is now a
And
privilege
I'm
to
going to
introduce our
pause
final
this for
speaker.
just a second.
Senator-
So Chris Murphy, I think, finally gets there. Most Americans don't want these passed. The vast majority of informed Americans, people who understand these things, definitely don't want them passed. What you're doing is you are taking a very narrow subset of non-playable characters who all they do is they buy the government narrative, they listen to freaking MSNBC and all these other assholes, they listen to you guys who completely manipulate data. Those are the people that want this passed. It is not the vast majority of gun owners. But again, facts and data and it don't matter to these people. We looked at it earlier on stream. Unintentional causes of death from what was it? From 0 basically to 24. Unintentional causes of death with firearms doesn't come in till like the 6th cause, somewhere around there. And even that includes like drive-bys where people shoot into a home and kill someone that they weren't intended to kill. I don't have enough fucks to give these people because they're absolutely lying. These people that are supposed to live on, data and supposed to be rational people and do research and all that shit, all of them can eat a giant bag of dicks. A giant one. I've said it before on streams. Big ones, black ones, white ones, red ones, yellow ones, big ones, small ones. Eat them with a fox, eat them with a sox. They can all eat them by the bucket load because they are lying dead to your goddamn face. They are there to push a narrative. They are not there to talk about actual facts. And I'll have to look up the Go Safe Act. Why do I do this to myself?
Senator Chris Murphy is the junior
now you
United
guys are
States
joining me,
Senator
so it's
from
even more
Connecticut.
fun.
The Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting occurred within the senator's House district at the end of his term after winning the 2012 United States Senate election. In the aftermath of the shooting and nearly every day since the tragedy, he has dedicated his career to gun safety legislation. His tireless work has resulted in the end of the ban on gun violence research at the CDC and the successful negotiation of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. With great admiration, Senator Chris Murphy.
And we all know Chris Murphy lies through his fucking teeth about
Well, it
guns.
sounded like you've been vamping a little bit there. So wait to arrive. I appreciate it. That's a very important skill in our business. Listen, thank you so much to all of the providers who are here today. Thanks for the tremendous work that On Call for Kids does to stand up for our children. We should not accept a country where the leading cause of death is preventative violence. You all just have a moral authority because of the profession in which you work, because of the high esteem that medical professionals are held in, that we don't have as political figures, as elected members of Congress. And so there's not a coincidence that our movement has grown and seen more success over the last 10 years as physicians and nurses and other providers have decided to stand up and speak on behalf of your patients. And so thank you for your focus on these specific pieces of legislation. But thanks for what you do to really make people understand the full scope of this epidemic. It's unacceptable that 110 people die in this country every day. It's unacceptable that a percentage of those are children. But I live in one of the more violence-prone neighborhoods in Connecticut. I live just south of downtown on the edge of the south end of Hartford. And I hear the sirens
if
whizzing
you
by
think
my
he's living in a
house
ghetto.
every night. I live just a stone's throw away from Hartford Hospital, a trauma center that's taking care of these gunshot wound victims. And so I know exactly what's going on every night in my neighborhood. I have a group of kids, a group of middle school students who are kind of like my neighborhood kitchen cabinet. And so I meet with these kids as often as I can. I try to do it every month. I tend to probably get to them every 6 weeks. And we sit down at their school, their middle school. It's right down the street from me. And we just talk about
I'm sorry, guys. My
what they care
connection's
about.
going stupid again.
And I always remind people that those kids in the south end of Hartford view school
I'm filtering through a
as
ton of
safe
data right now, too. So
right? We have this image of kids being most at risk when they're in a school. But for kids who grow up in neighborhoods with high rates of violence, the school is the same.
absolute shithead.
It's outside the school that they worry about. You drive around my neighborhood on a weekday afternoon. Statistically, I know there are thousands of kids in my neighborhood, but you don't see them because their parents or their caretakers tell them when school is over, you walk straight home, you go inside and you lock the door until I come home. And maybe when I come home, we'll go out together. We are losing a generation of children in this country to the trauma of gun violence as they experience it, even though they never get shot, because the fear that they have to live with every day is literally corrupting these kids' brains, making it unable for them to learn. The first time I sat down with these kids, the first thing they wanted to talk to me about was the walk to and from school and how scared they were every single day. How do we accept that as the most powerful, most affluent nation in the world? That there are
Okay. Here's the deal, Chris. You absolute mental midget. These kids fear walking from home and walking to school because there are violent criminals on the street committing violent acts. How about we focus on the violent criminals and we take them off the street so that that kid can walk from home to school without having to go through a fucking war zone? You could take every gun off the street. That war zone would just involve bows and arrows. Oh shit, let's take away the bows and arrows. Then it would just be sticks and clubs. Well, let's take away those. Then it would just be rocks. Well, let's take away the rocks. Then it's just violent people who have more people than you being violent, beating the shit out of you. I don't understand why this is so hard to understand for some people. Because you can look at prisons where they outlaw all weapons. All weapons. Nope, can't have nothing. Nothing with a sharp edge on it. Yet there are so many people raped, murdered, robbed, whatever in prison. It's almost like violent people will be violent no matter what. So how about we focus on them and not the tools? You fucking tool. Jesus Christ. Chessboard, what's up, my brother? I just saw you were in. Yeah, it's
millions of children in this country who fear
another
for their
day.
life, not just in school, but walking to and from school. How do we live with ourselves when we know what to do to change that reality? It's no mystery. This isn't trying to invent a perpetual motion machine.
I can thin these.
Right? We
results
know
out a little bit.
the inputs in order to get the outputs. Get the assault weapons off the streets. Universal background checks. Requiring the safe storage of firearms. You do those three things and you will see a different reality for our kids. I'm going to leave you with this. I know that to be true because we've tested that proposition. With your help, 2 years ago, almost to the day, we passed
Why the
the
fuck is that
Bipartisan
coming
Safer
up now?
Communities Act, the first significant anti-gun violence bill in 30 years. 30 years, the gun industry owned that building, and because of you and many others, you took it back. So today we have the chance to pass legislation to save schools.
Yeah, and
2 years ago, we passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
Knights, what's
My
up, my
neighborhood
brother?
is still a violent place. But in the first year
Night
after we
Custom
passed that bill,
Builds.
urban gun violence rates dropped 12%, the biggest drop, 1 year drop in the history of the country. It is soon to not be the biggest 1 year drop in the history of the country because we are on pace for a 20% reduction from 2023 to 2024.
Hold on, wait a second. I gotta pause him right there.
Now, when you start with 100,
So again, this is how intellectually dishonest these people are. We were talking about guns, and then he wants to mention all violent crime, right? Hold on. I paused that. I'll throw myself back up here. Let me hit that. So we were talking about guns, right? right? Everybody agrees. We were talking about guns. Chris comes up there and he talks about all violent crime. The vast majority of your violent crime doesn't happen with firearms. It just doesn't. Firearms are a small subset of violent crime. A couple of things are happening here. One, cities, Chicago and others, are refusing to actually charge and prosecute violent crime. So that's dropping numbers. Two, a lot of states, what's like 28 states now that have went constitutional carry? You see a drop in crime because criminals have figured out, oh, fuck, these people can now carry guns whenever they want to. They aren't necessarily the easiest thing to jump on these days. So there's a couple of things driving this so-called drop in violent crime. It's same thing. Two things can be true at one time. There are multiple factors that work into a lot of this stuff. So concealing or constitutional carry going multi-statewide, like 28, 29 states right now, whatever it is, the majority of the United States. However, you have cities that still try to restrict carry and they refuse to report violent crime. So they're dropping the numbers that way. So there's a couple things going on. This isn't, oh, the Safer Communities Act and all this crime started to drop. No, you're a fucking piece of shit and you're a liar, Chris, and you goddamn know you're a liar. If you don't like the way I say that, Chris, buddy, come debate me. I would much rather you debate someone like John Lott, because John Lott is a hell of a lot more polite than I am, and there's less of a chance for him to call you a fucking piece of shit than there is with me. But it would be way more fun if I could do it myself. Yeah, 29 states. Chessboard's got it. So this fucking idea that somehow the Safer Communities Act has done anything other than get innocent people, Arkansas, shot in the face by the ATF is absolute horseshit. And to remind you guys again, the 23rd, yeah, after tomorrow, 23rd, there is a hearing about the ATF. I'm going to be neck deep in work at the time. I don't know whether I'll be able to stream it that day. What I might do is set it up where I stream it while I'm at work, because I'm going to be listening to it anyway. And then when I can get home, then we'll stream it full live video with my fat ass on the screen talking shit the whole time. And maybe get a couple people in as guests, and we'll watch that. So hold on. I think I still got it. I'll share it this way. It will be on YouTube too, but I'm going to share a link. This is from the House Judiciary Committee itself. And that's how to get to the hearing, and then you can watch it on YouTube. Because for all of you guys that don't have this hatred of your brain cells like I do, well, and don't follow all of these things, there's the link. We can track everything down from there. But yeah, by all means, let's blame the tool. Let's never talk about the person using it. Let's talk about the it's mind-blowing to me. Even as normal people out there that say they don't own guns, they've never been involved in gun culture, as we call it. They've never been around firearms. It's mind-blowing to me that they can't equate this to other things. We don't blame the car, the truck, when someone drunk drives or runs over their spouse or runs over their own kid, or we never blame the object on most other things, but we do blame the person that actually commits the act, which is the way it should be. But when it comes to guns, oh, no, we ain't talking about the fucking shooters. We're not talking about all the other stuff that happened. We're not talking about all the times where law enforcement had a chance to stop this person beforehand, have them involuntarily committed, all this stuff. No. We're just going to talk about the gun. Yeah, Bradley, brain cells. Yeah. We kill a lot of those in these streams, by the way. However, I could do these streams for the next 900 years and never be as brain dead as that piece of shit over here talking about blaming guns for everything.
110 people dying every day of gunshot wounds, right? That's not anything to celebrate, right? Because we're just down to 80 or 90. But it's proof of concept. When you change the laws of this country and you make it a little bit harder for people who are irresponsible to get guns, when you start to take those assault weapons off the streets, you get immediate returns. There are thousands.
Oh, no,
of
you could
young
still steal another
men
vehicle and go
primarily,
drive drunk.
young black men primarily, who are alive today, who
Rent a
wouldn't have
car.
been if we hadn't organized and passed that critical.
What are you doing? I'm renting that car right there and I'm getting
Nothing
hammered. Catch you
worth
guys
fighting
in
for
Texas.
this world is easy. No political
Where you at?
movement that you read about in
New
the
York.
history books succeeded the first or the second or the third or the fourth time. The only successful political change movements that make the history books are those that were so convinced of the righteousness of their cause that they did not let failure after failure dissuade them.
Hold
They
on.
knew
Hold on.
that they were right. They knew that people would come around.
Hold
They didn't accept
on.
anything
I
except
gotta-
the total
let-
victory that
let me
comes
hit
to
the
help
right
the
button
safety
here.
of our kids.
You know the people that were convinced of the righteousness of their cause? Hitler, Mao, Stalin, dude, funny, another funny mustache dude. Yeah, those dudes were completely convinced of the righteousness of their cause. Anytime these assholes get into this greater good argument, fucking run. Because that's how that shit starts. We got to do this for the greater good, the greater good, the greater good. Yeah, all them some bitches have funny noses. We need to kill all them. Greater good. Mustache dude. Yeah, well, you guys might catch a little bit more of my sense of humor during this one, and it could get a little rough.
That is the line that we draw in the sand. Thank you to all of you for being here to make this reality a safer, more loving country with safe communities, with safe schools, with safe commutes to school for our kids a reality. Thanks for letting me join you here today.
Man, oh man.
Thank you all for being here today. Thank you to our distinguished speakers and senators. We hope we've imparted upon you the understanding that things can be done.
Oh,
to
you've
save
imparted
our
on me a
children
lot,
and our
lady, and
country.
ain't none of it
And
good.
we ask America as we head into voting season to please remember this as we make our votes, because we must vote to save our children.
I don't know, Ron. I really don't know. I can't remember. All right, so let's get into the next reason I said that they were pushing the gun control hard today. Blue Kurt, what's up, my brother? Hopefully you're doing well. So let me see. Hold on. I got to kill that tab. And then we got to do it in the screen share. And we got to do this tab. And I haven't even looked at everything today. These were the initial things that popped up. So this is Chuck Schumer speaking on the Senate floor today. And there's a few things to notice from his speech. One, he's talking about the Fifth Circuit. And then he doesn't mention it directly, but what he's talking about is the judge in the Fifth Circuit is a district court that is basically put a TRO on the ATF rule on, what is involved to be in the business or whatever it is. Basically the same shit that got Malinowski shot in the face. He gets into that. And then after that, we might look at one or two other things if it pops up, but this is where he's talking about judge shopping. Like, Democrats don't judge shop. Like they don't absolutely push for cases to come up in the Ninth Circuit or the Fourth Circuit. Like they don't bring cases there. But no, don't bring that shit in the Fifth, where you have a judge who actually believes in the goddamn Constitution. That's judge shopping, and they do have a bill about that. And it might be another one I need to get into. But yeah, we're gonna listen to old Chucky Schumer, this fucking sleazeball.
Take America. House Republicans already included the national abortion ban in the recent Republican Study Committee
Ready?
budget. Remember,
Wait a second,
the
he gets to
Republican
it.
Study Committee includes a majority of House Republicans and their leadership.
Let
Only
me know we're
done
still 5 by
sadly,
5.
The hard rights obsession with eliminating reproductive rights is not. Make no mistake. Republicans will have to answer for their anti-abortion records today, tomorrow, and at the ballot box in November. On guns, 2 years ago, serious-minded Democrats and serious-minded Republicans came together to pass the most significant bipartisan gun safety bill in 30 years. We passed several new common sense rules in our gun safety bill, including rules closing dangerous loopholes on background checks. And I salute so many of my colleagues, led by Chris Murphy and Kirsten Sinema, who helped make this happen. Yesterday, those rules on background checks were supposed to go into effect. But sadly, MAGA extremists had other plans. Instead, MAGA extremists exploited our justice system and put our background check reforms on ice. How did they do it? By taking their case to their favorite judge in the country, in the Northern District of Texas, to rubber stamp a nationwide injunction. The decision out of Texas is terrible for America for 2 reasons. First, the decision out of Texas is another consequence of judge shopping, a deeply unfair practice which jaundices the whole fairness and support a judicial system has, where radicals, right-wing MAGA radicals, all but guarantee a favorable outcome by going to a judge of their choice, often in jurisdictions where there is only one sitting
Happy
judge
chessboard
in that local
day
division,
for Coop.
guaranteeing
Chessboard.
a favorable audience and guaranteeing a favorable outcome. No one had any doubt when these
Yes,
right-wing
Abigail, our
anti-gun
entire government
safety
is
groups
corrupt.
went to this
State,
one
federal,
judge,
doesn't matter.
the very same judge who knocked out mifepristone. No one had any doubt what decision they would receive. Judge shopping jaundices our legal system like few other abuses do. I've introduced a bill to rein in judge shopping, and I hope both sides can work together on this legislation to restore fairness to the judicial system. If not, we're going to see injustice after injustice, a slanted judicial system
Yes, he
leaning in
does,
favor
yes.
of hard right radicals, imposing its will on the rest of the nation. And the courts will have less and less respect because of it. I urge the Judicial Conference. They agree judge shopping is bad, forum shopping is bad, but they're doing nothing to implement it. They should. But second, maybe even worse, the decision out of Texas means MAGA radicals have temporarily succeeded in blocking common sense gun safety measures and making our communities less safe. There were outrages in Uvalde, in Buffalo. And finally, the Congress, in a bipartisan way, acted the strongest gun safety laws in decades. Ever since probably I passed the Brady Law and assault weapons ban. Those were my bills in the House.
I thought Biden
1994.
claimed those. Wasn't Biden there?
And now people are less safe. Less safe because people who shouldn't have guns, young people, are getting them.
You know, every time they mention the assault weapons ban, you see Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, and there were a couple others who fight tooth and nail, say it's their bill. They no, it was a bunch of you cocksuckers. It wasn't just fuck, man. Jim Curtin, they are way out of control. And oh man, I really think it's going to get a hell of a lot worse. From what I've seen watching, especially legislation as far as voting goes, that's come up in the last couple of years, and the stuff that's got passed in states, Pennsylvania and some others, I think 2020 was just a rehearsal for what's going to happen in 2024. I hope to God I am wrong. I hope I am completely wrong. I hope I'm sitting here eating crow and we get some people in government with some actual fucking sense this year. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. And call me a pessimist, fear monger, whatever the hell you want to call me. I don't care. Watching this stuff as much as I have, and I haven't seen anything that got resolved after 2020. Matter of fact, a week or so ago, Fulton County finally came out and said, hey, there were thousands of votes that were rescanned twice or never signature checked, or we can't find images of them, even though the images were supposed to be recorded where you could go back in and audit. Fulton County came up, admitted all that shit. And maybe that's another hearing I need to find that we'll watch in the next little while. Be 60 in the fall ag. Funny, dude, I feel like I'm 90. So there's that. You're probably a hell of a lot more spry than I am. All right, hold on. Let's let this douchebag talk a little more, and then I'll look. See what it.
Closing
There's a couple other
loopholes on
things I think I can
background
find.
checks help keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. Keeping dangerous weapons out of the hands of dangerous people should be something both sides can agree on.
Who defines
But
dangerous?
MAGA Republicans and the right-wing gun lobby thinks the opposite. And with forum shopping, they can almost automatically get their way, at least in the district courts. Finally, on the PACT Act, this is some good news. Today, President Biden will announce some very good news. It's very good
Okay,
news
let's do
for
this.
our nation's veterans. The Biden administration
He got to the PAC Act there, but let me see. Let me check something. And for those of you guys who are interested in half this shit, when you go to C-SPAN, you look up a hearing, you can actually search by topic. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'll tell you that. And I searched for guns there. That's how we ended up with Chucky. Let's see. I don't know who this is, but let's see. Then typically you can click on a word and it'll bring it up. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And this was only the first part of the Senate that I looked at. I tell you what. Is it gonna work? Are you gonna do it? Hold on. Let me refresh and I'll search it again because I want to see what else was said. This was the first Senate session today. There was another Senate session after this. Hell, it might still be going. You search a lot when the shit just pops up when you click on it.
includes a majority of House
No,
Republicans.
that
and
was
their
still him
leadership.
running him
Rome may be
running
gone,
his
but
smoker.
sadly, the hard right's obsession with eliminating reproductive rights is not. Make no mistake.
Let's do this. Let's look. And yes, I know I'm an absolute masochist for this shit, but let me see. Let me open this up. Let's see if they say anything about guns or firearms in the second part. Now, I didn't even search for assault weapons. Come on, load. Yeah, I didn't even search for assault weapons. Because the way they word shit sometimes and the way the text is, you might have to do a couple of different.
Listen to the
I'd have
Book
to do a
Notes
couple of different
Plus
searches.
podcast with Brian Lamb every Tuesday.
Are you telling me? No, they haven't updated. This is where you get into the screwy stuff. because this has been going on. The second session's been going on for a while. Tell you what, let me go to watch from beginning. Second session's been going on for a while, and they may not have got into it. I was expecting Dick Durbin to be speaking about it too. He may have blown his wad when he was speaking. Out with that press conference. But just to see, hold on. Just to see what else was happening. So the Treasury Secretary, energy stakeholders testified. Then the Senate session 1, Democrat senators news conference, Roe versus Wade. This is where you get into the thing that we just watched about the news conference on gun violence. PACT Act. Let's see. Let's look at this real fast. Let me bring that up. Let me let it load, and then we'll search real fast. Giving away all the dirty secrets. Sometimes it's funny. They will have the House on the gun violence narrative, and then sometimes the Senate will be on it, and then sometimes both will be on it. It's another way you know it's all about the narrative. It has jack shit to do with safety, and you can really get in and see the messaging behind it. And it doesn't look like they mentioned anything in the House. And the reason I do that is you can kind of see the narrative. You can see where it's coming. You can see who's pushing the narrative. When you have some kind of lower level people pushing it, you know it's not a huge push. They're just kind of warming everybody up. When you see Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin and others come out and start pushing for it, as far as the Senate goes, you know there's a big push behind it. And it's definitely, they've tried to keep Joe Biden, Uncle Sniffy. They've tried to keep him out of a lot of the gun control. He'll mention it a little bit here and there. He definitely mentioned it talking about race and stuff like that the other day. But they try to keep him kind of out of that a little bit. And they let the other ones kind of take the hit for talking about this stuff. And it is definitely all narrative. It's mind numbing, but it is what it is. Definitely, if you watch it, hell, like we do, you guys show up to a lot of this. Definitely, when you watch it in long form, it's not just a clip. You hear their words in context, and you can really start to see the narrative that they're pushing. It's maddening because you can see how they manipulate the data. You can see how they write the lies out, and they skip over things, and they add stuff in, and they do all sorts of crazy stuff. Because if you go by factual data, it kills their complete narrative. And then they're done. They don't have it. Let's see, 651. I'll tell you what, guys. Just because, let's do this. I was going to do a separate stream about it, but I want to listen to this again before I really break it down. So today in the Illinois Supreme Court, there were some oral arguments about a forward card case. Let me get rid of that. That was another. And I'm still digging for what they call it, the Go Safe Act or whatever it was. I'm still looking for that one. So anyway, today the Illinois Supreme Court had oral arguments in a case about Ford cards. And to condense a story, I guess it was a couple people. They were shooting up in the air and got reported for it. Cops called. They actually got charged with a felony. And as soon as they were charged, their Ford cards were revoked. Guns were taken away. Because in Illinois, you can't have guns if you don't have a Ford card. They ended up pleading this thing down to a misdemeanor. And then they got their Ford cards back. But they actually sued because they were just charged, weren't convicted, and lost their rights to firearms, which is completely wrong. But they lost their right to firearms, lost their firearms, had to fight to get their rights back. Then they got their Ford cards back. And now it comes down to this case against the Ford card and against the government of Illinois, that you don't get to strip someone of their property and their right to own things because they are simply charged. Now, it's mentioned in here, it's 922. It's a section of 922 where if you're not, or if you are under a domestic violence order, under investigation, grand jury, whatever, you can't buy firearms, but you can still possess firearms. So this is about them taking away not only the right to buy the firearm, but the right to possess the firearm. What are you saying, Night Strike? We may win the Bucksnot case. I actually expect us to win that. And then I think I talked about that when we streamed the oral arguments for it. I do expect to win that. I would be really surprised if we didn't. Not completely shocked. I'll be surprised. You know, fat girl jumping out of the closet. I'm surprised. Axe murderer jumping out of the closet. You know, the difference in between the two. But I do expect us to win that. I won't be shocked if we didn't. If they came up with some bullshit opinion that still gave the government enough leeway on it, I wouldn't be shocked. I would be surprised. There's a difference in between the two. I told my wife years ago, there's a difference in between stupid and crazy. Crazy just does shit. Or, sorry, stupid just does shit. Crazy at least considers the odds and says, I might be able to live through this. Stupid just doesn't. Stupid has no concept of any of that. They just fork in a light socket and they roll with it. Crazy says, hey, this might take a little bit, but I might make it. And in between shocked and surprised, yeah, shocked. Okay, that fucking sucked. So, yeah. But anyway, this was the case today. This was this started 10 o'clock my time, 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central. And you'll see our buddy, what's his name? Thomas Maggs. He's arguing for the plaintiffs in the case. And, you know, we'll have to see how the Illinois Supreme Court comes down on this. I didn't realize this was happening today. Warsaw's really good about sending me the, whenever Bishop goes live in the morning, which is typically from anywhere from probably 8:20 to about 8:45. If Warsaw sees him go live before I'm in there, then he'll send me a link. And Bishop was talking about this morning, and this was in the Illinois Supreme Court today. So screw it. Let's listen to this. Because, hey, it's just another one of those days feeling like a freight train.
The first case on our call today is agenda number.
Let me know where the audio is good, guys.
751, Aaron Davis et al. Versus Jeffrey Yanchenko. Counsel for the appellant, are you prepared to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, and may it please the court. A I'm Assistant Attorney General Lee Jonig for the appellant, Chief of the Firearms Services Bureau of the Illinois State Police. This court should reverse the circuit court's judgment because the plaintiffs lacked standing to bring this challenge to Section 8.
I gotta pause this already.
The court can reverse on this threshold basis.
Okay, so give you guys some background. So the lower court in Illinois said, nope, Illinois, you're completely wrong taking these guys' right to own arms and their Ford cards away and confiscating their shit before they're convicted. Now, again, we said earlier they were charged with a felony, and then they actually got convicted of a misdemeanor and their Ford cards were reinstated. And this is, oh God, this needs to be a whole other stream, but I want to listen to this again. Audio is good here. So yeah, we're good. So what she's saying, and we've talked about it in a lot of other cases, the government coming in and even the court saying, nope, you don't have standing. Standing means that you were injured, and in some cases that injury is ongoing. So you have a case, and if the injury happened, and if the injury was somehow resolved before it went to court, the court or the lawyers will argue you don't have standing. Kind of like one of the best instances that I can think of is the 18 to 20-year-old ban on buying firearms. These cases were started when the people were 18, and they drug on so long that the people turned 21 before it actually got through the court. And the court said, well, yes, the government stopped you from buying firearms when you were 18 and 19 and 20, but now you're 21. So therefore you can buy firearms. You don't have standing because that's all been solved now. And she'll argue on mootness. And if you guys remember the original NYSERPA case, NYSERPA v. Bruin, when it went through the courts, it was thrown out over mootness because what happened is New York changed their laws a little bit. They changed their laws a little bit, enough to say, well, these people aren't injured anymore because we changed the law, and they try to get around it that way. So there's a couple different things that'll get argued in this case. The Hill News. I'll have to open that up, Warsaw or Night Strike. I'm gonna lose my damn mind. I had Warsaw in the brain.
Which goes to the case's justiciability, and it need not reach any other issue.
Counsel, let me ask you a question. So why do they lack standing? And give me an example of someone who would have standing.
So the plaintiffs lacked standing because they held FOID cards when they brought this lawsuit. If they had brought this lawsuit while their FOID cards
send it on, Chess.
during that period of nearly a year, then they would have had standing, and we might be talking.
You got to wrench post that shit.
But that's really what the standing issue is in this case, that the plaintiffs held FOID cards when they brought this lawsuit, and so there was no redress that the court could provide to these plaintiffs.
And so if they had filed the lawsuit at the time that their FOID cards were still revoked and they had not yet been returned, then they would have had standing.
Yes, and to be
Got
clear,
you,
I
War.
think there would still be a mootness issue there, but we don't even get to that in this case, because in this case, the plaintiffs had FOID cards when they brought their lawsuit. Now, the other way a plaintiff
I'm
can
gonna have
generally
to
have standing is if there's an imminent danger that they will
kill
be
my
subject
camera
to
for a
the
minute
statute
so I
of
don't
limitations.
kill the
That's
damn.
also not present here because there's nothing in the record that suggests
Excuse
that
me.
they will
But
be
not really.
charged with another felony, and that would lead to the statute potentially applying to them again. So because they don't meet either of those two ways that the plaintiffs could have standing, the case sort of fails on that threshold justiciability question, and there's no need for the court to get into any of the other issues. The circuit court conflated standing and mootness. So basically holding that because the court
This one
determined
legally
that one of
armed,
the
but I'll catch up with
exceptions
him.
to mootness was met, that therefore the plaintiffs had standing, but there's no authority that suggests that a mootness exception can excuse a lack of standing. And there's good reason for that, because what mootness exceptions do is they allow courts to address what was once a live controversy. So if they had brought their lawsuit while their FOID cards were revoked, and then that issue became moot. But to apply those exceptions to standing would mean that courts could issue opinions even when there had never been a live controversy. And that's sort of the very definition of an advisory opinion, which this court has repeatedly said is not permitted.
So when we talk about mootness, we're basically saying we can't give you any relief because you've gotten your cards back and solved. Is that what you mean when you talk about mootness?
Now, think about this. So, and here we go with my connection action stupid again. But think about this. So what she's arguing is yes, the government injured you. Yes, there was injury, but we kind of addressed that injury before this went to court. So therefore you can't bring this to the courts and have the courts decide on it. What that actually means is the government gets to screw with you and your rights all that they want relentlessly. And then before it goes to court, they just have to change their regulation or rule or law. And then everything is moot, doesn't count anymore. Like it never happened. But think about how many people are in fucking jail over this shit. Some egg and cheese breakfast. Oh, hell yeah, dude. I came home today for lunch for a little bit and caught up on some of this, but man, I went in, I had me 2 cream cheese bagels with eggs and bacon and other cheese on them. Oh, man. Talk about good. Sometimes you just got to have breakfast whenever. And this shit's still running slow. All right, let me play this more.
So I think a mootness situation would be present if the plaintiffs had brought their lawsuit while their FOID cards were revoked and they needed to get some sort of relief for the court, and then then there would be a question about whether to apply a mootness exception, which sometimes allows courts to reach out in sort of rare situations and resolve a moot question. But we don't even get to that in this case because, again, there's no authority for applying mootness exceptions to excuse a lack of standing.
So what makes it moot in this instance? If we were to look at that question.
Right, I think so. If the court were to overlook the issue of the lack of standing, it would then sort of need to address whether the case would still be moot because
I'm sorry,
of the restoration of the FOID cards, but then
I was skimming through what Chessboard sent me, and yeah, we're gonna have to watch that.
Apply, and there. No mootness exception does apply here, as we explain in our brief. The public interest exception, this is not the kind of sort of broadly applicable public question that sort of needs a court to reach out and resolve. And the exception for cases that are capable of repetition and evading review is also not met here because
let me hit. And I was listening to that, but let me hit Night Strike too. But yeah, if bump stocks fall in our court, then that means the judges are actually comparing the statute to the actual meaning of the statute and the actual operation of a full auto gun, which that should mean binaries, no problem with those. FRTs, no problem with those. Why? Because the trigger is actually resetting in between each shot with an FRT. And with a binary trigger, because again, remember the statute, which basically boils down to one pull of the trigger, doesn't say anything about release. One pull of the trigger, releasing a single round, it's not a machine gun. That's where binaries got to, because it mentioned, or one function of the trigger, not just a pull. They try to change that a little bit, but one function of the trigger, one round is released. So a pull is one function. So if it releases a round on a pull and then releases a round on the release of the trigger, that's a separate function. Binaries, you're doing that. You're holding the trigger back. Round goes off. Let the trigger go. Round goes off. That's two completely separate functions of a trigger. With a force reset trigger, as long as you keep the proper pressure on the trigger is actually forcing your finger to go forward, resetting. And then if you keep the right amount of pressure, your finger goes back and it releases another round. Completely separate functions of the trigger. And that Night Strike's right. It's if bump stocks, if we get that out of the way, that takes care of, and it actually takes care of trigger cranks. It takes care of force reset triggers. It takes care of binary triggers. There's a few different setups that would kill. But again, you got all these lower courts out there right now that are absolutely just, they don't give a shit what the law is or what the Supreme Court says. Hell, Minnesota, was it last night or the night before? It was night before, because they went through Sunday and then went into early Monday morning, and they basically took a binary trigger ban, shoved it in the ass of a tax bill, shut off all debate on it, and passed it. That's another video that I still got to do. Minnesota's gun owner Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. Say that 3 times fast for me. They were the ones that gave me the heads up on it, and I was up till God, I don't know what time that morning watching that shit. And the House and the Senate in Minnesota went wild. Some of the wildest stuff that I have seen in a legislative body. When they basically, they took, I don't know how many bills that they couldn't get passed. They shoved them into the tax bill in the House and the Senate, shut off all debate, and then passed them. It really is some of the wildest shit I have ever seen in a legislature. Hands down. I mean, it makes our federal Congress look like nothing the way they did that. And they broke, which, I mean, hell, Democrats don't care about rules as long as they're winning. So,
at the time, and as I mentioned earlier, there's no concern that there's no suggestion in the record that this issue might recur again with respect to these plaintiffs.
So getting the cards back impacts their standing and also impacts the fact, well, basically makes the case moot.
Yes, it's sort of an issue of timing. So because the plaintiffs had their FOID cards when they brought this lawsuit, there was no standing, and
absolute tyranny.
If the plaintiffs had brought their lawsuit while their FOID cards were revoked, then we would have kind of a mootness issue. And I suppose if the court were to overlook the lack of standing here, it would then need to address the mootness issue and the mootness exceptions. But because those exceptions don't excuse a lack of standing, the court need not even reach those exceptions if it rules on the issue of standing. And I think that the fact that, it's sort of a little kind of conceptually difficult to even really be talking about mootness when there was no standing, because, it sort of raises the question of, well, when did the issue become moot? And the answer is, it was kind of moot even before they brought their lawsuit, and that itself illustrates why this is a standing case and not a mootness case. And actually, the circuit courts and the plaintiffs, really only authority that they rely on is the appellate court's decision in Kaczynski. But that really illustrates this difference between mootness and standing. So that case was really kind of a classic example of mootness, where the plaintiffs had a FOID card, it was revoked because an order of protection was entered against him. He then filed his lawsuit, so there was a live controversy. And then that order of protection was removed, he got his FOID card back, so the issue was then moot. But we don't even get to that point here. We don't even have that here because there was never a live controversy in this case, because the plaintiffs had their FOID cards even when they brought
counsel, can it be moot and lack of standing at the same time?
Yeah, words are
I
supposed to
think-
mean whatever status mean.
I think so.
Yep.
That's sort of
Pretty much the
comes back
argument.
to this question of timing. The lack of standing. One way to think about it is to say that, well, the case was moved to begin with, and that's sort of one way to think about standing. But that still sort of raises the questions of, the way that we kind of know that this is a standing case instead of a mootness case is that we sort of ask, well, when did the issue become moot? When was there a live controversy? And the answer is there never was, because the plaintiffs, the issue was kind of moot from the beginning, for one way to put it.
Do you decide the standing question at the time the complaint is filed?
Yes. I think it's possible for a plaintiff to sort of in some ways lose standing, but in this case, there's no question that there was never standing to begin with.
As part of the problem are definitions here. Both definitions of standing and mootness have some element of the fact that the court cannot provide any kind of relief, right? So the same doctrinal basis for both ideas, right? The court cannot do anything if there's no standing, if the case is moved.
Yes, they're both sort of components of whether a case is justiciable.
And so that
But the difference is that in mootness, there are ways.
the judge actually asked a really good question right there about either standing or mootness. In other words, either you haven't been harmed and the court can't do anything about that, or that harm has already been addressed, and again, the court can't do anything about that. But again, we get back to the fact that when we're arguing over stuff like that, that means that the state could screw with you any way they want, and then before you go to court, they can just change their stuff and then moot the case. All right, Knight, give me a sec. Which tab am I on? I'm on this one.
Is that courts can reach out and decide moot questions that once presented a live current controversy. And I think that capable of repetition yet evading review is kind of the really exemplary exception here, because it's that arises in a situation where something is too short to really be litigated, and if it was never, if there wasn't a mootness exception, it would never be decided. But that sort of reasoning doesn't apply when you're thinking about standing and whether there's an issue of standing, because the plaintiffs, they could, all that standing requires is that the plaintiffs who bring the lawsuit have an injury that can be remedied by the declaratory judgment that they're seeking. And, in this case, we just don't have that here. I do want to address the plaintiff's argument that this sort of injury in the past from the statute is sufficient. This would also, much like applying mootness exceptions to standing, this argument would also.
All right, now it should be there in just a sec.
From this court's precedent, there's no authority suggesting that a past application of the statute that has concluded and that's not likely to recur would provide standing to challenge a statute in perpetuity. And all that, it's true that the court has some language about, a plaintiff has standing to challenge a statute if they have sustained an injury from the statute. But what that language does is it distinguishes that sort of current injury that I was talking about earlier with an imminent injury. So all it means is that a plaintiff doesn't need to wait until their actual, until
food.
What's up, brother Knight?
If there's
I made a cheeseburger hamburger helper.
charge with a felony,
Oh, hell yeah.
they haven't gotten the letter
With
saying
bits in
the
it.
void card is revoked. It's imminent that it's going to
It's
apply
good.
to them, so that plaintiff would also have standing. But again, we don't have anything like that here, and there's no authority.
Dude, my wife likes
suggesting
fucking
that
tuna
a
helper.
past application of the statute, standing
Mhm.
alone,
I heard food.
confers standing to challenge.
Oh
that
God, I'm
statute
going to
in
kick you off
perpetuity.
stream right now.
I also want to.
Anyway,
briefly
thanks for
address the
Night Strike
plaintiff's
showing up. He's
arguments,
gone. No.
About waiver. First of all, the defendant.
I love you too,
denied
Coop.
How do you?
pending,
Oh
that he
God,
raised
how do
this
you eat
issue
that?
in his motion to
I like
dismiss
tuna
under
fish.
219, and that preserved.
I
the
like
There are a
tuna.
lot of
the
jokes there,
defendant's,
Knight.
I like tuna
And
salad
even
too.
if there was any sort of concern about that, it was raised again in the summary judgment briefing, to which the plaintiffs did not.
There are a
respond.
lot of
So
jokes
they would
there.
have even forfeited this, waiver argument in any event. And again, we're aware of no authority.
Says
that
you.
suggests that after raising an affirmative defense. in
Well,
the
yeah,
motion to
because I was the
dismiss,
one
you then have
talking.
to raise it again in your answer.
Yeah,
because,
yeah, yeah.
The plaintiff's authorities about merger do not support that proposition. So for these reasons, the court should reverse the judgment on this threshold basis that the plaintiffs did not have standing. It need not reach the
And-
issue of mootness exceptions or the Second Amendment.
And
If
you
the
were
court
saying
were to
earlier
look
that they
past
could
this standing defect
they could
and,
change it just a little bit so they don't have to go to court and then change. And then I was thinking, yeah, and then they can change it back when they don't have to go to court.
That's what they. If you look at
and so
Night
the
Serpent
case would
versus
still be
Bruin,
dismissed as
that's what they
moot.
did.
That's what New York tried to do.
Yeah, that's the Night Serpent versus Bruin. That's why it
court
went
were
up
to
to the
look
Supreme
past
Court, got
both
kicked
of
down, and then went
those,
back.
Justiciability issues and reach the merits, respectfully, we would suggest that the court could wait for the Supreme Court's decision in Rahimi.
Bradley
on
had
the
tacos for lunch.
issue.
Oh, Bradley, we're
That,
doing hot wings
case,
tonight.
We expect a decision this term, so in the next month or so, and that presents a kind of similar question about whether a federal statute that prohibits firearms possessions by those who are under domestic violence restraining orders violates the Second Amendment. So we expect, guidance.
So here's another horseshit thing in this.
Yeah.
The federal statute, and I'll have to go, it's 922, whatever. It doesn't prevent
Probably
the
922R.
No, 922R is the like
A lot of gun
import
stuff's in
stuff.
922.
Yeah, it's a 922. There's 922, 921, 922, 923. One of them's like penalties and definitions. It's funny the way it reads, but 922R is actually the one about having too many foreign made parts in a domestically manufactured firearm.
Like it's either 920 or 918 is like, who can have a handgun and ammunition for it.
Yeah. But the statute she's talking about doesn't basically stop you from having firearms. It just says you can't go to an FFL and purchase new firearms. And see, the shit in Illinois both takes away your ability to buy and your ability to own. Takes away both. So again, she's arguing out of her ass, as they always do.
Yep.
On the application.
Maybe
of
922G.
the Bruin standard to a sort of kind of legislative categorical determination similar to the one we have here. And then the other issue, kind of to get into, if the court were to address the merits, is the scope of the judgment and the claim at issue here. Plaintiffs say that they're bringing an as-applied challenge, which would be a challenge to the statute as applied to them only. That's what an as-applied challenge is. But the circuit court held that the statute was unconstitutional with respect to every person charged with a felony.
Yes.
So just on that concession from the plaintiffs, going further and holding the statute unconstitutional with respect to anyone besides plaintiffs, at least that part of the judgment should be reversed. And even if the plaintiffs kind of did want to challenge the statute with respect to others besides themselves, to bring a facial challenge effectively, as we explained in our brief, that argument's
Is it
foreclosed
G?
by their
Yeah, maybe G.
acknowledgement that some
Fluffy.
people
Because
charged with some
922R
felonies
has to do with
have their cards
compliance
revoked.
with
And in any event,
foreign
the
manufactured
statute
parts.
is constitutional with respect to these plaintiffs would foreclose a facial challenge anyway.
What was the concession that someone charged with murder? Was it something on that effect?
You chess dude, yeah, you couldn't be more right.
Is that the concession?
So I think because a facial challenge says that the statute is unconstitutional in all applications, acknowledging that a person charged with murder could have, the statute could be applied to them on a constitutional basis, that would say, well, then it's not all applications. And so the statute's necessarily not facially unconstitutional. In any event, the fact that the statute is constitutional with respect to these plaintiffs would foreclose that facial challenge anyway. So again, if the court were to look past the justiciability problems in this case, and
Yes, they could,
reach the
Abby.
merits, the Supreme Court in Bruin explained how to analyze Second Amendment claims. First, the court looks to whether the plain text of the Second Amendment covers the relevant conduct. And if it does, it then becomes the state's burden to show that the law comports with the nation's.
Okay, now you got to listen to her words on this one, because she absolutely is lying through her teeth and just putting her own feelings into this.
Historical tradition of firearms regulation. At the first step, the plaintiff's possession of firearms while under this felony charge is not covered by the Second Amendment's plain text. The Supreme Court is clear that the Second Amendment covers possession of firearms for self-defense by those considered law-abiding and responsible and not dangerous.
No, that's not what it says. That's not what the courts found. It was possession of firearms for lawful purposes.
3D printers can solve
This is
problems.
not covered
Yes,
by plaintiffs
yes, they can.
because while they were under this felony charge, they had conceded that there was probable cause that they recklessly endangered others with firearms. So that would sort of suggest that shows that their claim would fail at the first step.
When you
But
say
even-
they had conceded, be more specific, how did they concede?
Sure, it was because they waived their preliminary hearing.
She is
So by
both,
doing that,
Abby.
they acknowledged
She
A
sounds
lawyer-
more like a politician than a
at
real
least
lawyer.
the quantum of
She is a
evidence
lawyer
found
and a
to show
politician.
probable
Two things
cause
can be
that
true
they
at the same
had,
time.
committed this crime.
But they had not been convicted and there's still the presumption of innocence, right?
That's correct. The presumption of innocence doesn't apply to this question of whether, to sort of the scope of the right, which we know from both the Supreme Court's explanation that that's really a trial right, and it goes to, the burden of proof at trial, as well as the fact that there are other constitutional rights, the First Amendment, we list a few others on page 36 of our opening brief, that can be lessened, or that have a lesser scope when a person is
Hey, Fire Otter.
indictment.
Are you reading?
Fire Otter, what's up, brother?
That they waived
Fire Otter's over on a Rumble.
Yep. I was over on the Rumble side too, but
they still
I was cooking.
maintained their innocence. So it's not as if they said, I'm assuming, Judge, we agree that there's probable cause here. They basically waived the right to the hearing.
So I guess my first response is I don't think that the waiver of the concession of probable cause doesn't affect, or the waiver of the preliminary hearing does not affect, whether
Absolutely,
the
Blue.
plaintiffs were considered law.
That goes into my whole rant about the BATF.
When
Yes.
a person,
You don't see them going after tobacco.
there is at least
You don't see them going after moonshiners. You don't see them going after
they're considered
explosives.
Well,
You only see them going after civilians with firearms
here's the thing.
and
So
shooting dogs.
if I use tobacco as directed, which I do, I smoke like a freight train. I know that is going to injure me. However, if I use a firearm as directed, all of us knowing the 4 rules of firearm safety, it will never hurt an innocent person. So unless there's a malfunction, and then the manufacturer should be sued for that. SIG,
Well, in this case, it's tobacco and moonshining, or the production of alcohol and tobacco without paying, the government its taxes.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like the NFA. You can do these things if you pay the government their tax, and if you don't pay the government their extortion fee, they get to shoot you in the face.
Yeah.
Which how fucking insane is it that over a $200 registration fee, you can go to jail for 10 fucking years?
Did you see that guy in South Carolina that, got arrested for apparently drug dealing and whatnot, and he was just the normal dude that concealed carried.
Yes. That's the one.
And in the middle of the case, they dropped it and let him go and put him on his way. When they drug his name through the mud and they arrested him and they held him without bail.
They drugged
that lawsuit. That lawsuit, he's gonna get money out of them somehow.
Oh, dude, he better get paid. He better not have to work another day in his life. But here's the thing that sucks about that. Guess whose money they're using to pay him?
Ours.
Yes. And his. So they basically treat this guy like shit, run him through the mud, then they take his own money and then other people's money and say, oh, no harm, no foul, here you go. We're cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, this lady is throwing out absolute shit. She's slinging shit from her mouth, and I'm wondering. I did not know that was a public toilet.
She's doing the same thing the government always does, and I've talked about it on streams before. They're playing a game of hide and go fuck yourself. You go first, and no matter what, we win. That's the government's argument.
That's got to change. That's got to change.
The only way I can see that changing, honestly and truly, the only way I can see that changing is if we go to a loser pays situation. In other words, like with this other dude we were talking about. So the government charges you with all the shit. They run you through the ground. Okay, well, guess what? He wasn't convicted. So the government gets to pay you all your lost wages. They get to pay you pain and suffering. They get to pay all your legal fees all the way through. And it should be that way on any case.
Right.
If you're going to drag me through the mud, if you're going to destroy my life, your ass better be coming off some serious coin for some reparations. And we know the left loves reparations. You better be coming across with some serious reparations on that shit.
Not law-abiding for purposes of the Second Amendment until that charge is resolved. And again, that we know that because the Supreme Court has said that a felony conviction is not the only way that a person is considered not law-abiding. It's one way, and that was, that's what the Supreme Court said in Heller, that a felony, restrictions on those with felony.
Oh, her next argument, yeah,
is
you guys got to hear
example of something.
I don't want to.
The Second Amendment scope, but by saying it's a non-exhaustive example,
You can't blame me.
Acknowledging that there are
I
other
can't.
ways.
Are there cases where it's specifically been said that having a pending charge makes you a non-law-abiding citizen?
No, there are not, because Bruin is a relatively new case.
That was a
and there
good
isn't much
question
law
from that judge.
applying it.
Yeah.
There's some federal cases actually that we cite in our brief that reach that conclusion. But that would be a reason for this court to, kind of have the benefit of the Supreme Court's decision in Rahimi, which we expect, will provide some guidance on the contours of who is considered law-abiding and responsible. But even if the plaintiff's possession of firearms did fall under the second.
Because and she's fixing to get in this argument real fast, but think about it. So I am always going to be a big advocate of gun-free zone signs. Don't mean shit. If the criminals are going to carry. As long as you're not going through a metal detector, keep your shit on you. Technically, you are breaking a law by carrying, which makes you a non-law abiding citizen, which makes you a criminal that can't own firearms, according to her. Even though you've never hurt a single soul, you had no ill intent towards another person. I mean, you had every good intent. But same old same. We're the government. We win no matter what. Is what she's arguing. It's like playing Monopoly with a 4-year-old. You got 37 hotels sitting there. They just tip the damn board over and go, "I win." That's the government.
Second Amendment scope.
I so
Restricting
wanted in
possession
that.
was still constitutional because it comports with the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation. And so that inquiry doesn't require that the modern law and the historical law be identical. It instead requires that it asks whether the modern law and the historical law imposed a similar burden on the ability to use firearms for self-defense.
It's got to be
and
the
whether it did
easiest
so for
I've taken
similar
your gun
reasons.
off.
And the three categories of historical analogs that the defendants provided, both independently and together, satisfy that inquiry. So the plaintiff's constitutional challenge fails at both steps of the Bruin inquiry.
Yeah.
So again, even if the court should reverse on the standing issue and need not even get into mootness exceptions, much less the Second Amendment question. But if the court were to reach those issues, the judgment should still be reversed.
I can see it in your face.
And so if the court
face
has
too, I think, right here.
any further
Mhm.
questions, we ask the court to reverse the circuit court's judgment for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your argument.
Get all sexified.
You know what the itty-bitty red kit is?
Know where what is?
The itty-bitty red kit because my knee is...
May it please the court, counsel, Thomas Mag for the appellees, Aaron and Charles Davis. This is, of course, a Second Amendment case addressing, perhaps as best I can in the order that counsel gave her
Yeah.
argument. I'll start with standing.
I'm like pasty white.
To have
There's not even an ounce of darker complexion to help me fry stuff.
Start on mac and cheese. I'll help you with the chicken. Or you want to go ahead and cut the wings down?
I can do that, but I can cut
Yeah.
stuff.
Cut that, and then I'll help you fry. So, just hitting this real fast. This is Thomas Mag, and we've heard him argue in quite a few Second Amendment cases, and he is definitely on the ball when it comes to arguing against the state or the feds on their gun control. Written by the controllers and changed change every time they're losing control. Yes. You guys, we have been through enough stuff on streams like this where, well, I take it all the way back to the 1934 NFA. The end argument in the 1934 NFA. Do you remember what it is, Night Strike?
I do not. I just know I don't like it.
Okay, so the end argument in the 1934 NFA was a short-barreled shotgun was not useful in military service, so it wasn't protected by the Second Amendment.
Until World War II.
If you take their logic, if dude had got caught with a locked and loaded MG42, by their logic, what they would have had to say is that's completely useful in military service. It's completely protected. That was their logic. If you follow their logic all the way out, that was the logic that upheld the
until
NFA.
Until 1986, where the Hughes Amendments say anything produced after 1986 is ineligible for civilian use.
Yes.
And you may only purchase and own firearms that are full auto that have been registered prior to the 1986 law. Plus, you must pay a $200 tax stamp on them.
How many of you guys follow Forgotten Weapons? Ian or Ian?
It's Ian McCollum.
Ian McCollum, yeah. He did a stream or a show. It's been a few days ago. It had been last week, where there had been some cases going on, some back and forth with the ATF over some firearms. They were registered to police departments before 86. And then I guess the police departments wanted to put them out on the market, and there was a fight back and forth. And then it finally came down to, okay,
they could put them on the registry.
Yes, we can go ahead and put these on the registry. So that gave it was either 2,000 or 4,000, which isn't a lot when you look at that closed market.
Well, let's put it this way: it's not going to raise or lower the prices of said firearms. It's just adding more to the the registry.
And I will tell you guys now, there are a lot of people that don't want to see the NFA go away because their $100,000 gun would basically be a $2,000 gun if the NFA went away.
Well, if the NFA went away, you know, if the NFA really did go away, we got rid of the Hughes Amendment, then guess what? You know, if you want an M16, well, it won't cost you, a new produced M16 won't cost you as much.
No.
It will cost you only as much as an AR-15 because it doesn't cost that much to drill out that third hole and put the parts in.
Hold on, let me look at something.
You might have to drill out some more in the mag well, but the fire control well, but it's not that much.
You'd have to go to a low shelf, but I mean that's nothing.
Yeah,
I mean that's literally nothing.
It really is.
Transfer of machine guns.
Sorry, I was just on a tangent there. I've been unhappy about the whole I can't have a machine gun lately.
Yeah, like we never go on tangents. That's just never happened.
What was that? What was that? Your wife likes my wood?
Here is this. And there's a couple of things here. So a Colt AR-15 SP1 registered receiver, 223 Remington, 20-inch barrel, $32,995. A Colt M16 20-inch barrel 223 5 mil Sierra range, $41,995. Colt M16 5.56 20-inch, $41,995. Yes, you could build that gun for under $500 at today's prices. So there are a lot of people that are heavily invested in this shit that don't want the NFA to go away. Who tried to kill you, and do I have to go shoot him in the face?
No, it was imbecilic.
It was what?
Somebody being an imbecile.
Somebody being, well, you're married to me. You ought to be used to that.
Yeah.
Standing to challenge a statute on constitutional grounds, generally speaking, there are two requirements. One is that you've been injured by the statute. The other is you're about to be injured by the statute. In this case, my clients, the appellees, actually had their FOID cards actually suspended for approximately a year, plus or minus, because of the imposition of this statute. The statute has not been repealed. If they were to be charged similarly in the future, they would be subject to the exact same prohibition. Thus, they have standing.
But the fact of the matter is, at the time that this suit was filed, both of these individuals had active FOID cards. Is that accurate?
That is my understanding.
And that when that was challenged, the motion to dismiss and the motions for summary.
This is
judgment,
Illinois, right?
in the order.
Yeah, this is Illinois.
They don't,
Yeah.
the judge doesn't address that. He goes right to mootness.
I got you.
But don't you have to get past the hurdle of having an actual live controversy to decide before you can even look at whether or not it's moot or it can be decided?
We have an actual live controversy here in that my client's FOID cards at one time were actually suspended. The statute remains on the books. It is enforced routinely, thousands, if not tens of thousands of times a year. And if there was a similar charge against my clients, it would be enforced against them again.
Counsel, I'm concerned that you're having to use the word if a lot. And does that cut it as far as standing? I mean, when we're talking about an injury and whether or not a person has standing, don't you have to show that at the time the lawsuit is filed, the requested relief would redress the plaintiff's alleged injury?
I think that goes more to mootness than standing.
Well, that's from Cahokia, from this court, talking about an actual controversy.
In order to have standing, specifically under 1983, which is the 1983 case, you are required simply to have sustained an injury. My client sustained an injury, i.e. having their FOID card revoked. I understand that there's a question of potential mootness that can be addressed.
Stay there and stand in. You argue that they sustained an injury.
Yes,
This lawsuit does not look for damages for a past injury.
that's because the 11th Amendment and 1983 of the statute do not allow damages against a state entity in their
So
official capacity.
you're not looking for past damages for past injury, correct?
Because the law does not allow it, that is accurate.
Okay. What this lawsuit does, the declaratory judgment and a request for injunctive relief, is look into the future, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So where is the injury that triggers the ability to have bring a case that looks into the future?
The injury that triggers it is the revocation of the FOID cards
In the past.
in the past.
Okay. I mean, there's trouble. I mean, you can see what we're saying. This lawsuit looks prospectively. It doesn't look back. It doesn't say, I was injured, therefore I have damages. It looks forward. What will happen in the future, correct?
It is seeking to prevent a similar injury in the future because of the damage that took place in the past.
And this, as you, I think you're agreeing, this is an as-applied challenge.
This is an as-applied challenge. There are many circumstances where this statute would be constitutional.
Well, so these people, the Davises, this case is just about them and their situation, correct? It's not about anybody else.
There are no other named plaintiffs. That is accurate. It's not a class action. The statute itself purports to suspend FOID cards or allow the ISP to suspend FOID cards in two relevant circumstances. I guess one relevant circumstance, but there's two labeled circumstances. One is where there's a federal or state law that prohibits possession of a firearm by a person. Doesn't apply to the Davises. The second, the relevant portion, is there's a provision of the statute that purports to allow the ISP to suspend FOID cards.
Yes.
If there's a
This is
federal
where
or
Mag
state
starts
statute
drilling
that
down
prevents
on this.
persons like the Davises from acquiring firearms or ammunition. There is a federal statute, 18 U.S.C. 922, in as in Nancy, I believe it's the exact quote, that prohibits persons charged but not convicted of felonies, not from possessing firearms. They can keep the ones they've got while they're under indictment or information, but prevents them from acquiring new firearms while they're under charge. That is what this case is about, is the state police interpret
Yep, Abby.
a reasonable interpretation of the statute, aside from constitutionality issues, that triggers the section N of the FOID Card Act, which requires suspension of FOID cards when a person cannot acquire a firearm. My clients did have their FOID cards suspended because of such statute. The statute is routinely enforced and is on the books. Counsel has argued about waiver of preliminary
Yeah,
hearing.
if you can get into a credit union, you're usually
The
way
fact of the
better.
matter is, my client's FOID cards were suspended / revoked before they could have had a preliminary hearing and before they filed a waiver of a preliminary hearing.
Can you just, for a moment, to fill that idea, what impact is there for a waiver of a preliminary hearing?
I was about to make the point that I think it's a red herring, the whole preliminary hearing, in that, in my experience, and I think it's
What's up, Brother
fairly
Joe?
standard everywhere, is that a preliminary hearing is not a finding that that a person actually committed a crime.
It's not, of course, it's not a plea of guilty.
not
But
a-
does it have some legal impact?
The only legal impact that it has, as near as I can tell, is to allow the state to proceed with charges without a grand jury indictment. Literally nothing else.
And see how crazy is what Mags is saying right there. Which is basically, we can go to this small preliminary hearing, which I think he gets into it in a minute, that completely allows hearsay all kinds of non-evidence that wouldn't be relevant in a criminal case. It allows them to go on with that and then strip you of your property and your rights. And if any guys, hell, pay attention to any of this stuff, which I know you guys do, it doesn't take anything for a grand jury to indict somebody. I mean, people have said it plenty of times. They'll indict a damn ham sandwich.
It concedes probable cause.
It does not challenge probable cause. I recognize there's a fine point there, and I'm not trying to be evasive, but I don't think it concedes anything. I think it says we're not asking for this hearing, the same as we're potentially waiving a formal reading of the indictment. We don't need you to read the charges to us. We can read it
Well,
ourselves.
it's more than just reading the charges.
Right,
I mean, we understand the statute requires for a commencement of a felony prosecution, there must be either an indictment or a finding in a preliminary hearing, correct? That's what the statute says for the commencement of a prosecution.
Yes.
And so by not requesting a hearing, by conceding that parties by making some sort of legal statement, correct?
Yes, it has some effect. But I would note that to get past the probable cause standard of a preliminary hearing can literally have a police officer, and I've seen it happen, testify that he read an article in the newspaper that suggests that the defendant did something. I mean, it's an extremely weak standard with hearsay allowed.
Certainly pursuant to such a finding, however, the court can impose all sorts of conditions on a defendant who is charged with a crime for which there is probable cause, correct? There are all sorts of conditions a court can impose that for a person who's not been charged by indictment or preliminary hearing, the court could not impose those conditions, correct?
Subject to constitutional protections, I agree with that statement. But in this case, the Second Amendment under the Bruin test requires you, assuming you get past the plain text analysis, I'm trying to answer your question here, to look back at what the law was, depending on which sources you read, either at the time of the adoption of the Second
God,
Amendment.
here we go with my
or
connection. It's
arguably at
stupid
the time
again.
of the adoption of the 14th Amendment. I think the time of the
I love your bad connection.
Yeah, I don't.
But I understand argument in the literature on that.
I'm just messing with you.
And
Oh, I know,
prior
bro.
to 1925, as near as I can tell, there were no restrictions on even actual convicted felons possessing at least long arms. And prior to 1925, other than in New York City, apparently, there were only 6.
Let me pause that because
Other than New York City, they're not in New York City. They're in the state of Illinois.
But that's what he's getting to there. So, one, we didn't have as many felonies back then. Our legal code has exploded since then. Typically, for a felony, your ass was in prison or you got hung, shot, something. You were out. You rolled the dice. You didn't make it. So there were no prohibitions against a felon having a firearm. Even if they did their time, they were charged with a felony.
In
They
the
went-
20s and 30s, didn't they have Al Capone in Chicago?
Yes.
I know this because I had a great aunt that lived two blocks down from him.
But the point being behind that, even if you got a felony, if you did prison time versus getting the death penalty, when you got out of prison, you had all of your rights back right then.
Yeah.
You know, when the 34 NFA hit, and it was all these, they wanted, handguns under the NFA and all this stupid shit, and they put the $200 tax on them. They still didn't have a background check system like we have now. So the only people that could afford the machine guns were, guess what? The fucking criminals. And yes, Capone and all his guys and all these other gangsters, they could still get a machine gun.
When did
shipped
they
to their
institute
front
the
door.
4473s? Was that the 60s or
No,
was that for the 68?
Threes didn't come in till 90s, I think.
Okay, that was 90s. Okay. Well, no,
Yeah.
it can't. No, it can't, because if you watch the original Red Dawn movie, they said go. The communists said, go to the gun stores and find all the 4473s.
You might be. Well, I remember that line. It was a Cuban dude. I know you're typing too. I'll let you find it.
I'm looking it up. Okay.
I was typing the same thing, but I heard your keys in the background. I was like, "Hell, you find it. Your connection's better than mine."
I've got a gaming keyboard, so yeah.
I could hear.
Okay, I was right. It was part of the 1968 Firearms Act.
Oh, so it was part of the 1968. I don't think then though. I'd have to go back and look. I don't.
It probably wasn't as stringent as it is now.
Yeah, I don't think it was required then. I think there were sheriff's departments that did it. There were police departments that did it, but it wasn't.
If you wanted to buy a new gun, you had to do it.
All the FFLs. Because I remember, because part of this bullshit with the 4473s getting so stringent came about with the Brady law, and that was in the 90s. When they upped some stuff.
I still think I'm not. I didn't live back then, so I don't know. I don't know the details. I think you still had to fill one out if you bought a new firearm.
Abigail posted, and I think she's probably right. So the NICS came up in the 90s. The National Instant Criminal whatever came up in the 90s, but the 4473 come up in 68. And I think that's exactly it, Abby.
I just looked it up, so it was part of 1968. So,
because hell, like I said, even when they did the 1934 NFA, Capone could have ordered a damn Thompson submachine gun and had it mailed to his front door.
As long as he paid the $200 tax on it.
Shit,
and as much money as he was making, because they went after him for tax evasion. They couldn't pin any of the crimes he committed on him. So the only thing they could get him on was that he wasn't paying enough taxes.
Yes. Well, guess what the ATF started out as?
It's part of the IRS.
It was part of the tax,
IRS. It was part of the IRS before.
No, I think they were before the IRS. It was the tax something. Huh. That's fine. Just rent them. That'll be fine. But they were part of the Treasury Department. That's what it is. They were part of Treasury.
They were part of Treasury, then they were part of the IRS.
Yeah.
And then they were part of the FBI, and then they were split off from the FBI.
Yep.
6 states that restricted actual convicted felons from possessing handguns. The prohibition that we're talking about here is of complete 20th century creation. The latter, almost the latter third of the 20th century, 1968 specifically. There is no historical predecessor in accordance with the second step of Bruin to allow the suspension of the right to keep and bear arms, either for a felony back in the Revolutionary War era, although this case doesn't go that far, that's beyond the scope of this case. But more importantly, a person is merely charged with a crime, whatever that crime is. I agree that the court, in an appropriate circumstance, following some sort of hearing, could impose certain conditions. For instance, if John Dillinger, historical bandit, were arrested and bond was allowed, I think the court, following a hearing with sufficient evidentiary information, could impose a restriction on firearms. But that's not this case. This is an ipso facto, you've been charged, therefore your rights are eviscerated case, at least for the foreseeable future. And there is no precedent in the historical American jurisprudence until the mid to late 20th century for anything coming close to that.
Counsel, I want to hear your thoughts on whether or not the Illinois State Police are accurately interpreting the federal statute that allows them to revoke a person's FOID card when they're charged with a crime. You touched on this briefly, but I'm looking at specifically when the statute talks about a person being prohibited from transporting or acquiring firearms in interstate commerce. Is that what your clients were doing?
No. My clients did not transport anything in interstate commerce. The problem that Your Honor is pointing out is that the federal
Nick started in
Constitution
98. Yeah.
limits the powers of the U.S. Congress. And in order to avoid a facially unconstitutional federal statute, Congress, using its powers to regulate interstate commerce and foreign nations, etc.,
What are you about?
jurisdictional nexus.
Something in my
in
throat.
The federal prohibition.
Because Mags is, I thought you were just going to throw it because what Mags was saying, because we've talked about on streams before, almost all your federal gun control is based on the interstate commerce clause. And they said it in the 34 hearings. The reason they did it that way is because if they had tried to just ban guns outright, it would have been unconstitutional. So they fell back to the commerce clause to base their laws off of it. And Texas and a couple other states are going through this hell right now, where like the Texas made suppressors. We're going to make these in Texas. They're not going to be sold out of state. So therefore they don't fall underneath the NFA because they haven't traveled in interstate commerce or foreign commerce. And if you went by the government's logic, that's the way it would work. Because the only grounding they have for their gun control is the interstate and foreign commerce. The good old commerce clause, my most hated clause in the Constitution right now.
Arguably, a firearm made in the state of Illinois that has never crossed the state line would not be subject to the federal prohibition under 922G. I'm sorry. But of course, the overwhelming majority of firearms out there are. I think a case could be made that a person in Illinois shouldn't have their FOID card revoked because they could possess an Illinois-made firearm under 922 or acquire an Illinois-made firearm under 922GN. But we really haven't addressed that because it's an extremely highly technical, fact-specific scenario. I certainly understand and appreciate the argument, and I won't say that thought didn't cross my mind. But I think that is technical commerce clause jurisprudence beyond the scope of the Second Amendment.
Can I ask you another question about the court's order here?
Please.
The court ordered that, among other things, that issued a permanent injunction.
Yes.
Restraining defendant from suspending FOID cards pursuant to the statute. A person is charged with a felony but not convicted of a felony.
Yes.
As you agreed, your case here is a case of as applied challenge and not a facial application.
Exactly.
The state argues that this injunction is too broad in that it impacts everyone and not just your two clients as applied challenge.
I disagree. We're not asking that all persons whose FOID card could potentially be suspended under this subsection, that the statute be prohibited from doing.
Isn't that what the court ordered in the
No, it
injunction?
didn't. For instance, it's a violation of federal law for a person convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence to possess a firearm.
Yes, it
For a person
absolutely
who's
is, Jess.
indicated a sufficient degree of mental incompetence to possess a firearm. This same statute would require the state police to revoke that person's FOID card.
And this is where we get into. So say someone committed a crime, whether they did it last week, whether they did it a year ago, whether they did it 20 years ago, the mere act of them purchasing a firearm or having a firearm should never be a crime. Because what it comes down to, well, they purchased a gun. They could commit a crime with it. They had a gun. They could commit a crime with it. The only time you should be charged with a criminal offense is when you actually commit a criminal offense. And years ago, if you asked me that in my 20s, I would have agreed, hey, yeah, if they committed a felony, then, you know, they don't deserve guns or something like that. And until you have seen rights stripped or had rights stripped, and you realize that violent people are still going to get the guns, it doesn't matter what you say about it, they're still going to fucking do it. And the logic of that whole system falls to pieces. That yes, the NICS background check system is a bunch of horseshit, and it always has been.
Applied to those scenarios and every other potential scenario
You doing, my
other than
buddy?
merely being charged with a felony, the statute remains in full force and effect.
But for anyone in the state of Illinois who is charged with a felony,
Yes,
this injunction would sweep them all in, right?
I agree with that.
Okay. The state argues that that's too broad, where your claim is an as-applied claim only as to your two clients.
It is not as applied only as to my clients. It is as applied as the person's charged with a felony but not convicted. That is an as applied challenge as well. An
Yeah,
as applied challenge is.
That's a good point, Abby. And there was a bill, when I started my channel, Sheila Jackson Lee put it out. That was basically said anybody who was in any sort of treatment for mental health would be excluded from owning a firearm. And she, in her bill, it mentioned that like 50-something% of the United States would be excluded from owning firearms, according to her bill.
And that's why it failed.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the mental treatment was. If you were under treatment for depression, ADD, you name it, you would have been excluded from owning a firearm. It's one of the bills. I have to look it up. It's one of the plasma cuts that I did. It wasn't 130. Because some of these old plasma cuts, I actually put the bill number in. It may have been 125. And then I quit putting the actual bill numbers in the plasma cuts. But yeah, it basically would have excluded over half this country from being able to own firearms, because you were under treatment for, something simple that most people come out of. And then what's my brother Fluffy saying? Oh yeah, that was the other thing. Yeah, if a vet was, basically said, "Look, man, I'm bad with money. Someone else needs to help take care of this." Yeah, they would have been excluded from owning a firearm.
Yeah,
just for being fucking bad with. Hell, how many Americans are bad with money? I'm one of them.
I'd say about 50% of us.
Because I'm glad Night Strike mentioned it, that there might be some sales coming up on some set me kits and stuff coming in the future, a little bit later in the year. And I'm trying desperately to hold back on buying a set me kit right now.
They might go cheaper, but yeah. I mean, but $120 is pretty cheap.
Yes, but I'm trying desperately, because if I could just throw money at guns, I would do it. Parts kits, I would have CZ kits laying all over my desk, a VZ58 kit sitting right there. I mean, damn tomorrow.
That's the only other gun I don't have is a VZ58. I want a VZ58.
I do want a VZ. I do.
I mean, I have AKs out the ass, but there's something about the checked VZ,
The VZs are fucking beautiful, man. I love them. I didn't again, rabbit trail. I didn't know about the VZ58 until I started getting to the AKs, and then something popped up, and it may have been Brandon Herrera with the Lord of War review that he did.
On my bucket list, the VZ58 is on there, as is the Daewoo.
Oh yeah,
the Daewoo K1 or K2, which would be the semi-automatic version was the DR200,
and those were the South Korean.
They're South Korean, M16s more or less.
Yes,
but they're different because if you looked at the bolt carrier, it's like a cross between an M16 and an AK.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's what the bolt carrier looks like. Like they took the piston from an AK, the piston and the bolt carrier from an AK, and then they put the front half of the bolt carrier from an M16 on it, and it's like there you go. There's the Daewoo K1 and K2 charging handle bolt carrier.
Who did I find out about Daewoo's from? I can't remember who I was watching. It may have been Ian.
It may have been Ian
from Forgotten Weapons, and he was showing one off, and it was like, "Hey, this is the South whatever version of this," and I was like, "I don't care, I want one."
Well, the funny thing is, some parts of the Daewoo rifle, the K1 and K2s, are interchangeable with M16s, like the trigger.
It's a freaking cool ass, and I can't remember how he explained it, why they built it that way. I don't think we would license the M16s to South Korea at the time, but
we weren't sure
in hand, so they were like, we'll just kind of get around these patents and stuff and build it this way.
But the magazines they use are the same magazines we use for the M16.
Yeah, they're still regular GI issued mags.
No, they're NATO mags.
Yeah, well, NATO GI, same thing.
Yeah,
steel stamp mag. They started out, I think, with 20 rounds, then they went to 30 round. Those mags are interchangeable, and I can't remember the acronym for them, but yeah, it was a regular, what you'd give to any GI, any NATO, whoever. Stanag. Haha, Abby's there. She got it.
Stanag, yeah.
See, there you go. That's why I love you guys, because you guys are on the freaking ball.
Is a specific plaintiff, for instance, or a specific fact scenario. A facial challenge would require the statute be unconstitutional in all fact scenarios as to all persons. And as we've conceded, there are scenarios where this state statute challenge would be constitutional. It just happens not to be in the case of a person who's merely charged as opposed to being convicted of a felony.
Yep. As usual, Abby's on it.
Of course, this court's motto, which in Latin is behind me, translates to hear the other side. In this case, nobody heard the other side of the Davis's argument before suspending their FOID cards. Literally, it was done within days, potentially double-digit hours after they were charged. We're not saying, again, that with an appropriate evidentiary hearing, that a FOID card could not be revoked, suspended, invalidated on a charge with sufficient evidence. We're simply saying this particular statute, as is applied to persons merely charged and nothing else, is unconstitutional.
It's not a due process argument you're making.
Go ahead, please.
Are you making a due process argument?
The Second Amendment is incorporated as against the states by the 14th Amendment due process clause. So
you're talking about having a hearing.
Yeah, I think it could be done with a hearing. I mean, this is getting into advisory. Of course, it's not really appropriate for me to tell the legislature how to write a statute, but they would be on much better grounds if there was some hearing, like in a DUI case before a driver's license is revoked. There's 45 days of which a person charged with a DUI could challenge the summary suspension. I don't know if that would still satisfy Second Amendment due process or not, but it would certainly be a much better argument for the state.
Well, that's an argument that I've looked at. So the 18th or 1783 Mass Act is used in a lot of these anti-gun briefs that shows, hey, the government can take your shit away. What they don't tell you in that is one, it was about the powder storage, but two, you had to go in front of a jury before the government could take your property. And then if the government found grounds to take your property, they sold it right back to the public. So it was never a situation where the government was saying, no, the public can't own these things. They're too dangerous. That's grenades, that's mortars, that's cannons, swivel cannons, you name it. Everything that the government owned. They weren't saying the people couldn't own it. They were just saying that, you know, if you're a jackass and you got 900,000 pounds of damn powder loaded in your cannons with the ball in front of it ready to go, maybe you're not all that responsible. Which, when everything was built out of wood and extremely close together, that could be a thing.
And unless there are any other questions, it appears I'm running close to my time.
Yeah, he gets done, and then the state gets another kick at the cat real fast. So and then we'll get out of here.
Rebuttal from the.
Thank you, Your Honor. 3 points. First, I want to clarify kind of how the statute works, because there was a question of whether something is being interpreted, and there's no sort of confusion about the statute here. The way that Section 8
There's
works
plenty of
is
confusion.
it says that the state police can decline to issue or revoke a FOID card if any federal statute prohibits a person from acquiring or possessing fire.
Now, remember, she's equating this to the federal law. The federal law says if you're under indictment for this, that, DV order, you can't buy firearms from a federal firearms licensee. It doesn't mean you can't own them. If you go by, what is it, 14th Amendment, whatever it is, if you go by that, what that means is these states can be freer than the federal Constitution, but they can't be more restrictive than the federal Constitution. And what you're running into here is a law that is way more restrictive than the federal Constitution allows. Any judge that respected the state Constitution should have laughed her off that podium right there.
And there is a federal statute, that's Section 922N, that prohibits a person charged with a felony from acquiring firearms. So the state statute is broader than the federal statute. It sort of says,
well, Abigail, you'd
there
be
are
in
these
pretty
federal
decent shape
prohibitors
right
that
about
are
then.
either about
That's all I'd say.
acquiring or possessing firearms. Then the state prohibits possession. And there's nothing, in applying Bruin's text and history test that suggests that, the state has to be in lockstep with
Chest
the federal
bound and determined to
statute,
make me laugh my ass off.
and then to the second point, there was also some discussion about how there was no individual hearing about specifically, revoking a FOID card. But again, applying the text and history test, there's nothing in the historical record that suggests that an individual hearing is required in order to restrict a
Yes, there
person's
is.
possession of firearms. We presented
1783 Mass Act.
analogs that were on this more categorical basis. And then more broadly, the Bruin very clearly explains that the historical law and the modern law do not need to be identical. And the analogs that we presented here, obviously they're not identical because, it's been 250 years, but they're historical analogs about restricting a person's possession on a temporary basis, on, some in a categorical sense and some
Both of
based on
these.
some legal process that is short of a conviction. So kind of with all of those different approaches, there clearly is, a historical basis supporting this law under the Bruin standard. But then my final point, just
Is that like two Bofang radios together?
because again, that's really what the threshold issue of this case is about.
Yes, I'm being
The
completely
plaintiffs
smart.
argue that they have standing because they revoked.
Don't you have to have a license for those radios?
Year. But
You're
as
supposed
this
to have a
court has said,
license
when
to
we're talking
use
about a
them. You can
declaratory
buy them,
judgment, we are
however,
seeking
without
prospective
one.
relief challenging a statute.
That throws
There
us
must
down
be
a
more
whole
than
nother
just,
rabbit hole.
the court's
Why do I
use of
have to
language,
mention
a wrong committed and an injury inflicted. There has to be
Yeah,
an
I
ongoing
don't think I want one.
controversy, and that's what we don't have here. And then with respect to this question of, that this statute might be applied again, either to them or to others. With
Yeah,
respect
you
to
have,
applying the
Chess. It just
statute
wasn't
to
out
the
in your
plaintiff's
face
hand,
like it is now.
again, that is pure speculation. There's nothing suggesting that they will be charged with another felony. And then with respect to applying the statute to others, it's well established that a plaintiff cannot assert the constitutional rights of others if they themselves do not have standing that would be redressed by the declaratory judgment that they're seeking. That's ultimately what the problem of standing comes down to, is that when the plaintiffs brought this lawsuit, even if they had
Hold on.
prevailed and got this declared.
I threw us off on this rabbit trail, but let me say this. So the only
love rabbit
reason
trails.
I'm not seriously looking into comms right now is because the surveillance state that we live in, the minute I key a radio in a shit hits the fan situation, the minute I key that radio, I just drew a big ass target on myself.
Well, not to mention you also have to you have a wife and 2 kids you got to take care of too.
Oh yeah, that too. But yeah,
I mean,
that's
pretty good excuse there.
That's my biggest issue with comms, and there are a lot of guys, Wiretight and a lot of others that I really love. And who knows, I may get into ham later. Besides just hamming it up.
I mean, instead of Baofangs, I would just invest in like some really good short range radios that don't require a license.
Yeah, it's and I've got
And
some.
maybe even a CB radio, because CB doesn't require a license either.
Yeah, I've got some. I can reach out there a little ways. It ain't great, but I can reach out there a little ways. But with all the technology out there, with our government, signals intelligence, they can pinpoint your ass the minute you key up on a radio.
I hate to say this, Coop, but they know where you live already because you're a gun owner. You filled out a 4473 at some point, so they know who you are.
Yes. Oh, they absolutely know. I mean, there's
no question.
Yeah, it's not even a question.
I mean, and don't think by not filling out a 4473 you are invisible to the government.
No, well, look at what
you're not.
Well, look at what's been talked about in the last little bit.
If you got a social security number, guess what? The government knows about you. Oh no.
Yeah, well, let's drill down a little bit more. Look at what's been talked about and what was admitted within last week and this week, where if you buy certain things, if you buy parts kits and a 3D printer, if you buy a printer and filament and then rails for a gun, the government already knows about you. They are already monitoring that.
Yeah. I mean, I bought a 3D printer on Black Friday. Then I bought another one like in December off of eBay. So yeah, they're probably tracking that.
Absolutely. These bills that are coming through.
But I use 3D printers to print a whole bunch of shit. Toys, shit that helps me fix stuff around the house.
Well, that's kind of why. And John Crump did a story on it. I can't remember whether Legally Armed did a story on it. A couple other guys. That's why they were kind of matching things together. So if you bought a 3D printer and then you bought a barrel, or if you bought a 3D printer and you bought rails, if you bought a 3D printer and bought a magazine, all that's flagging. And then they're monitoring that. They're monitoring it through the credit card companies. They're monitoring it through the shipping companies, you name it. And it may make it a little bit harder for them to track you, but they're tracking you. Bet your ass on it, they are. Which is why I say we live in one of the biggest spy states in the world.
Judgment, it does not do anything for them. And so that's kind of what the core standing problem is here. And so for those reasons, unless the court has any further questions, we again ask this court to reverse the circuit court's judgment. Thank you.
All right. So that's the end of these arguments.
129751.
That
M. Davis et al.
That effectively ends the night. Yeah, let me throw myself back on the screen. So I'm not streaming, but
it doesn't end me. It ends this evening.
This evening. And for you guys that didn't see it, there's a hearing about the ATF on the 23rd, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning. I am going to be at work as much as I want to take that day off. I'm going to be at work. I'm going to post it again. But there's a hearing about the ATF. Starts at 10 o'clock in the morning from what I can see. And I will more than likely stream it while I'm at work. I'll just be listening and then chat with you guys. And then maybe we'll hit a lot of it once I get off work, and then I can be on stream and we can all lose our shit and ask what the hell's going on.
Did you hear what happened with the GOA and the ATF the other day?
Which one?
Apparently the GOA got a win on the ATF by striking down the what you call it, the illegal the gun business law.
The business
ruling, yeah.
Yeah, it was there were a few people there. GOA was there. The Virginia Citizens Defense League was there. There was a Tennessee group that was there. I'll have to look up, and maybe one or two others. So there were a few groups that were involved in that.
States were involved in it too, I believe.
Temporary restraining order on it, which runs, I don't know, for maybe a month. I think I can't remember exactly. I have to look it up. I would have loved to have been able to get the oral arguments on that end of it.
Me too.
But like the other one, well, that happened it was in Texas, 5th District, but it was in the Amarillo court. And I tried to get oral arguments for it, but couldn't get the oral arguments. Otherwise, we would have rolled that. We would have run that hard. But I couldn't get them. Because some of these smaller, the what they call the circuit courts, they don't stream their oral arguments. And it's like fucking pulling teeth to try to find the oral arguments. Because even if I had to pay something to get them, we would have done it. But I couldn't get a hold of them. So, and those were just last week, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it wasn't but a few days ago. Those oral arguments went down.
Yeah.
Don't forget the little rocket. All right, guys. Anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. Tell them where you can find you. Post your shit in the chat.
You can find me on YouTube. Just look up Night Strike 1 or youtube.com/@NightStrike with a Y.
And Night Strike does a lot of good stuff, guys.
Lately I haven't been doing anything other than being on other people's chats because, well, I haven't had a lot of time lately, unfortunately. Just life is getting in the way.
Dude, that's the reason I haven't produced a whole lot of standalone videos in a little while. And I've got a couple mail call videos that I've got to do from I'm not from this planet. I just got in a, where's that? It's sitting right here. I just got in something from AR Guns, AR Patriot. I got to do a video about that, but and like tonight, I didn't plan on going live tonight, but all this shit was going on today, and I was like, screw it. I gotta jump in on it. So it's you go when you can go. So that's all I gotta say.
It's true. All right, guys. We'll see you later. I'll see you later, Coop.
I am gonna try to nail something down, I think on Sunday nights, at least for this semester. For Sunday nights and Tuesday nights, which that kind of competes with dark. I may do it. It just depends. Because I don't want to jump on dark stuff. I'd rather be.
He doesn't have a monopoly. You can do your shit whenever you want to.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I'd rather be in Dark's chat shooting with the shit with everybody, you know. Because I have a good time with.
Because Dark never sends anybody else links anymore.
So it might, and I don't know. I'll work that out as it goes. But I think definitely like late Sunday nights, I may get back to the original Share the Pain streams. Because I don't have to be at work Monday morning until later. So there's a chance. I'm not saying it's 100%, but there's a chance I might get back to late Sunday nights doing some stuff. Because I'd like to be on a regular schedule, but I also, fuck me running, I like torturing people at random. So
you do. You definitely do.
I do.
And we hate you for it.
Yeah, I hate me for it too. Trust me.
Yeah.
And it might be Lightning where I start. Well, you got Tactical Turkey. It depends on what time I'm actually getting off. I may try to do something between then Tactical Turkeys and then dark, because Tactical Turkeys is another stream I like hitting. So we'll see. It just depends on how it works. If nothing else, if it's just the late Sunday night, I'll try to stick with that.
You know how you're talking about a Set Me? Right
Yes.
now I'm playing with a G3/Set Me Trunnion.
Is that what you call your balls?
No, it's actual Trunnion. I'm not kidding. I could send you a picture right now.
Dude, yeah, I'm gonna wait. Like I said, try to find a little bit better deal on some stuff. But I think the Set Me build is going to be the next big build that I do, the next new build. I need a 19 slide, and I got another build together, and I need to mill out a couple of receivers. I got AR stuff to do. But the Set Me, I think, is going to be the next big one that I want to do. Because I've just always loved them. I've looked at them plenty of times, and I'm like, damn, I can TIG weld.
Well, that doesn't mean anything.
I can bend metal.
Yeah, well, TIG weld, you're going to have to TIG weld a Set Me or a G3.
Yeah. Which
So-
then, I mean, TIG welding, baby. It's a TIG, torch, gas, and some
There.
film.
I just texted you a message. That's what a Set Me and G3 Trunnion look like.
I have no idea what I did with my phone.
Neither do I.
I'll find it in a minute. But anyway, as always, guys, you guys have a good night. You perps be cool.
Tell Dark we said hi, guys.
Keep that thing on you at all times. We'll see you guys with hopefully Dark in a little while, if I don't crash before then. And just be safe, guys. Take care of one another and be cool. I think we got a bumpy road coming at us. So
saying it lightly.
yeah, it really is saying it lightly. And yeah, Lightning, Dark never starts sharp. I know you're being a smart ass, but yeah, Dark never starts sharp.
He always starts late.
There's
your
it is.
phone.
Came through. I'm a fucking moron. You know that?
I didn't say that.
I did. And I freely admit it. So anyway, you guys be cool, man. We'll catch all you guys after a while. Love you guys. Be safe. And we're out.